This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a very long time. It's something that I think a lot of people who are very online and are comic fans and who have done the digging over the years probably know about. Long rumor turned fact turned official by DC in 2020. We are talking about Alan Moore's event that never was, Twilight of the Superheroes. Okay. So in 1987, Alan Moore was on top of the comics industry. Watchmen was, of course, a huge success, and it wrapped in October of that year. Moore was riding high on that success. We know that things between Moore and DC became sour after it was clear that he would never get the rights to Watchmen characters, and that even though DC had sold Moore and Gibbons on the idea that eventually they would get these rights back and they would reap all these benefits and things like that, that DC never intended to let Watchmen go out of print. And so they sort of tricked him, at least from his perspective, and he said he would never work with them anymore after he realized that his relationship with them would officially end in 99. But before things fell apart, Alan Moore was working on a project for DC that could be viewed as the spiritual successor for Watchmen. I've never seen anyone say that before about this. That's what I am saying. And I believe that. And we'll talk about why. In 1995, the 39-page proposal for this project mysteriously popped up on the internet, and it would go on to be a battleground for Moore and DC, and it would show audiences a peek at what they would never actually get. We're talking about Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes, the greatest superhero story never told. Now, Alan Moore talks a lot about his philosophy on superheroes, what he thinks a good crossover is, and many, many, many other things. And I think as we talk about this, it's important to break down the mindset of Alan Moore and where he's coming from. This is a project that we will be doing over multiple weeks, the next few weeks at least. And so we're going to talk about this in stages. And today, I really want to go over what Alan Moore was thinking when he created his pitch and sent it off to DC, why he did it, what inspired it, who inspired it, and what his hopes were for Twilight of the Superheroes. Before we start, do either one of you, Kayla or Tyler, have a familiarity with this at all?
Nope. Not at all.
Just whispers. Yeah. Early internet forum stuff, that's all.
I feel like I've heard of Twilight of the blank, but that could be Twilight of the Gods.
It is, yeah.
Versus this, like maybe I've heard of superheroes, maybe not. But I've definitely, I'm familiar with that title to a certain degree.
Twilight of the Gods is essentially what Ragnarok is. Like that's basically what that means. And so this is taking that idea, that concept, and then of course applying it to superheroes. I think for most people, it has been whispers and rumors. There was a time when this was not even accessible and it was difficult to find, and it really is just this proposal. People have done fan art over the years and things like that, but there's not anything more than this that is an official thing.
What year was it pitched?
This was pitched in 97.
97.
Or I'm sorry, 87. Jesus, 87. 97. My God. By 97, I think Alan Moore was trying to figure out how to curse the brass at DC Comics.
Figure it out by God. Yeah, it's been working ever since.
So, I want to start with what it is, because I think a lot of people don't even have any familiarity about what this would have been, what the plan was, and things like that. So, Twilight of the Gods would have been the event that followed Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it would have seen a Rip Hunter and John Constantine from the future returning to that present DC. So DC's present in 1980, whatever, or early 90s, whenever this would have come out, to warn the heroes about the future and try to prevent it from occurring. That future is 30 years from the present, when the world is now ruled by different superhero dynasties. The House of Steel, which features Superman and Wonder Woman, who are now married. The House of Thunder, which is the Marvel family, so like Mary Marvel and Billy Batson and everybody else like that. The Titans, the proper Justice League, and other groups. So what I've just laid out for you is that the world has now been overtaken. It's been run over by superheroes, and there is no longer, the human influence is diminished because superheroes now run stuff, and it's hurting the world. I'm not going to get any more today on what actually happens in the story, because that's what we're going to tell this over time. But I want to circle back and talk about Alan Moore's mentality and why this was going to exist. I'm going to read words from Alan Moore now.
Sean, before you read this,
yeah,
do we all have our psychic blockers on to prevent mind melting? Kale, did you put yours? Did you do it yours this morning?
I've actually turned mine off.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
I'm really looking for that right now.
Cool.
So
good, sounds good.
So this is Alan Moore on crossovers. Mind you, the actual document is very long. Like I said, 39 pages. And it actually starts in a funny way. Moore says, "I'm sure this is going to be an interminable ramble, as these things usually are." So yeah, it is very much that. But I've parsed through it to find the things that are, I think, most interesting and pertinent, and we'll go from there. Quote, "Firstly, as I see the commercial side, the perfect mass crossover will be something like the following. It would have a sensible and logical reason for crossing over with other titles, so that the readers who were prompted to try a new title as a result of the crossover, or vice versa, didn't feel cheated by some tenuous linkage of storylines that was at best spurious and at worst non-existent. It would provide a strong and resonant springboard from which to launch a number of new series, or with which to revitalize old ones again in a manner that was not obviously crassly exploitative so as to insult the reader's intelligence. With an eye to the merchandising that Marvel managed to spin out of Secret Wars, I think it's safe to assume that if it were possible to credibly spin role-playing games, toys, quote, waiting for Twilight, unquote, posters and t-shirts and badges and all the rest of that stuff from the title, then that would be a good idea. Ideally, it might even be possible, while appealing to the diehard superhero junkie, to produce a central story idea simple, powerful, and resonant enough to bear translation to other media. I mean, I know that I'm still probably intoxicated by the Watchmen deal, but it never hurts to allow for these things as a possibility, does it?"
Man, I love hearing Alan Moore, the capitalist.
Not just Alan Moore, the capitalist, Alan Moore, the optimist. At this point, Alan Moore is optimistic about his future with DC because Watchmen went so well.
Yeah.
This is 87.
yeah,
Watchmen was, we don't know exactly what month, but if it was earlier than October, Watchmen wasn't even done. And it was a hit on release. It's not like it became a hit later.
That Dark Knight came out the same year, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it kind of
Similar
revitalized
time frame,
what people thought comics were. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fascinating to me to read the words of a man who we now know as, bitter and jaded, being hopeful and optimistic about what could come next. I love that. Thought that was pretty cool.
And it's just weird hearing him talk about, like, oh, the marketing potential of these toys, and we can do like a waiting for Twilight thing. It's Alan Moore as Stan Lee, which is like mind-boggling now, with the history that's been there.
Well, I think also too, it's him selling it, to the higher ups.
And I'm sure, like, Secret Wars, the original one, did well, Even the toys, like, the toys are iconic, It's not even just the comics. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pitching this as a answer to that. Smart move.
Yeah. He went on to say, for one thing, crossovers require some very hard thinking about in advance if they're not going to generate more problems than they solve. And in thinking about something which will affect every book that the company publishes, if only in subtle ways, then one obviously has to be very careful. I shouldn't say that as yet, although I saw the outlines, I haven't read any of the Legends series or its crossovers, mainly by reason of not having got out to a comic shop recently. The premise, and pay close attention to this because this will sound familiar. The premise, if I understand it correctly, looked very good. It seemed to be attempting to give a sort of resonant mythic context to the DC pantheon while at the same time establishing a more rigorous social context for the assembled characters in terms of storytelling, thus drawing the whole DC continuity together into an interesting whole, which is exactly what it needs doing in the wake of the crisis. The more we can reinforce the idea of DC Universe as magical and concept in itself, assuming that those are our aims, then the more successful we'll be in keeping readers hooked upon that universe and on the books that chronicle its various phenomena. So what is he saying? Let's break it down. There was a book called DC Legends, and it was a weird, like, event crossover that didn't actually cross over with any books. It left the crossover open-ended in the sense that the books that were being published in at the time and referenced by the Legends event didn't include any like major crossover stuff. They were still doing their own thing, but the Legends book managed to reference that. And it was a very different sort of idea. It was a 6-issue event, and the crossovers were like Batman at the time, Superman, Secret Origins, and it's sort of the first crossover after the crisis. And it launched several books and things like that. He's looking at this as a blueprint and a way to create a mythos and reestablish the mythic quality of these superheroes, which is what we were talking about earlier. Remember, I was saying DC's heroes are more monoliths unto themselves, and Marvel is more of a universal monolith. The Marvel universe is the draw, whereas for DC, it's the characters. Alan Moore is trying to change that, but he's also trying to establish, and this you'll understand this a little more, he's also trying to establish the DC characters as absolute and timeless. And it's very ambitious, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about how.
So I was looking into this Legends thing. I guess that's what launched Suicide Squad by Ostrander. Ostrander wrote this. Ostrander written and John Byrne drawn Legends, which that's a fucking team.
Yeah, Dan Trudeau says it launched the new Justice League, the Suicide Squad, and the Wonder Woman reboot, and it was the first appearance of Amanda Waller.
Yep.
Oh, the wall.
Exactly.
I mean, the one thing that jumped out to me too, Sean, that you mentioned is him wanting to kind of make these characters almost mythological, but also retain the social aspect to it, that it's social commentary on things, which just, that's Watchmen. That's Dr. Manhattan, versus, all the stuff that happens around Dr. Manhattan.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And the DNA of what Alan Moore thinks about superheroes and comics in general is all over this. It's all over this. And the other thing that I got out of this, especially from just reading the whole document, is that Alan Moore, maybe not the absolute biggest fan of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Too wordy for him.
I think based on what he says, he has problems with what it did to DC overall and the universe. I'm going to go on. Of course, this approach isn't without its problems. If you don't do it right, if your assembled multitude of characters look merely banal, which I personally believe happened with Secret, then your entire continuity is cheapened in the long term, along with its credibility, whatever the short-term benefits in terms of sales might be. When this happens, your only recourse is to greater acts of debasement in order to attract reader attention, more deaths to appease the arena crowd element in the fan marketplace, eventually degenerating into a geek show. Crassness aside, is that not sort of what happened?
Greater acts of debasement.
Dude is calling what is still happening now, even the way he describes crossovers.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And what they should be is, and what they are now is what they shouldn't be still,
Yeah. And when I was reading through this stuff, I was tying it into what Dan Didio had said. Sort of like, we kept doing the same thing and we kept playing to the same audience. And in order to appease them, we had to keep doing more and more and more and more. Like, not more different stuff, more of the same stuff. And in my mind, Moore is outlining the dangers of that. So to continue, then there are the unintentional injuries in internal logic that can be unwittingly inflicted upon the mass continuity by such a venture, whatever the individual merits of the creators or their efforts, purely by the vast organizational problems that a project of this size seems to encounter. To explain that, I should perhaps look at a series that I have read, that being Marv and George's excellent Crisis on Infinite Earths. Although the motive was pure and the aim true with regard to Crisis, I can't help but feeling that somewhere along the line, in the attempt to consolidate and rationalize the DC cosmos, a situation even more potentially destabilizing and precarious was created. What he's talking about is the way that the Crisis eliminated the multiverse. Alan Moore felt that eliminated creativity and possibility, but he also felt that it annihilated and, to use his direct word, it unpeopled the characters who were lost in the Crisis. It did something worse than killing them. It removed them from the reality of the comics altogether.
Oh, like Earth 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's true.
He saw that as a problem.
They just they don't exist anymore. They never had like an ending, Their story's gone. Yeah, I can see that. It feels a little dramatic, but I get it.
Well, but it even more than it takes away like an ending, it takes away context.
Sure.
Exactly. That's exactly he said. He talks so much about that. I don't want to read every word, but yeah, go ahead.
The idea of the multiverse is ingrained in the framework of the DC universe. Look at that iconic Flash cover. With the two Flashes running side by side. Like it's it's identity. Oh boy, not Identity Crisis, Dan. We're not talking about that yet.
That's exactly what DC is, and I think Alan was trying to parse out how to get back to that. So moving forward, he said, I believe that one of the things that the comic fan is looking for, multi-title crossover epics, is some sense of a sanely ordered cosmos, not offered to him or her by the news headlines or the arguments of their parents over breakfast. That isn't to say that it's healthy or necessarily desirable to fulfill this fundamentally escapist sort of urge. I myself would feel uncomfortable if the imaginary reality I was offering my readers was intended as a pacifier rather than as something to make them think about their own reality. I'd cite Watchmen as an example of how it's possible to fulfill the requirements of a continuity much more strict and rigidly defined than is usual, while still making some sort of relevant point about the that the book readers are living in.
So even back in the late 80s, Alan Moore would have said "fuck you" to the people who said, "I don't want politics in my comics. I just want escapism."
Right. He believes that that's the death of story.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Like, he's saying, "Hey, we can have our cake, but we gotta put some nutrients in there. We gotta put some." We got to put the vitamins in there that we need.
It sounds like a disgusting cake.
It probably is.
Maybe a smoothie is more apropos.
Yeah, it's that same way of whether you like it or not, like McDonald's is all sugar, but if you need a meal, you can eat it and it will fill you,
Right. Exactly.
If you read nothing but comic books, you'll get something out of it.
And Moore doesn't want to serve McDonald's.
Right.
Moore understands your need for McDonald's as an unconscious lack of care for your life and a desire to escape and not address your life. Moore wants to force you to look at it and evaluate it.
Moore wants you eating a Big Mac while watching Super Size Me.
Well, good. he wants to make Red Robin the restaurant.
Is that any better?
Yum.
The
That's
McDonald's,
right?
I mean, marginally.
So he says, attendant to this, there are a number of people in the industry who feel that it's time on the continuity and try to get rid of a lot of the rather anal and obsessive attitudes that have been allowed to dominate the marketplace and to some degree have hindered it in its periodic attempts to be taken seriously. And now we get into his reasoning for doing this. And what I believe is probably, alongside Watchmen and Crisis, the primary reason why Alan Moore wanted to make this comic. Here we go. I suppose a shining example of this would be Frank's Dark Knight, which, while it doesn't seem bothered about fitting into any graven in stone continuity, does service to the legend of Batman and brilliantly redefines the character for an 80s audience, and nobody really seems to care how much this all fits into the continuity because it's such a bloody good story. Will Jason Todd really die? Will all the superheroes leave Earth to Superman and his government pals? Will Oliver Queen really get his arm burned off at the elbow in a fight with Clark and become an embittered urban terrorist? Who cares? He's saying that what the Dark Knight did for Batman was that it established a framework by which every creator who comes after Frank Miller can look at and say, okay, this is who Batman is. This is where Batman ends up. This is the end of the line. This is the myth of Batman. How do we reach that point? That's up to us. But this is the framework. And everybody knows it because this is the hottest thing in comics. So if you care about Batman comics in the 80s, you know this story. So when something happens in the current Batman that makes you think about that, you go, oh, wow, there's that connective tissue, but it doesn't disrupt it if you've never read that. You're not disrupted by a lack of having read The Dark Knight because you're letting the future inform the past, which is the exact opposite way that comics operate.
But it's also funny because he's also saying here, too, that if it's a good story, the what's around it doesn't matter because people are enjoying it for it being a good story in and of itself.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
This so it's forward thinking and continuity as opposed to the previous past thinking. And stop me if I'm getting to where you're going, Sean, but this sounds a lot like Future State.
Okay.
You know, like they were planning, or not Future State, but 5G in a way.
5G, yes.
Yeah. You know, planning the future and how we get there is the fun part. Maybe in a much more condensed timeline, which might have been what the problem with it was, but
and drawing to a close the story of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
The human, the personal identity of those characters, not the myth of them, not the cape and cowl, not the thing that sells tickets, but the human part of those characters, which I can see the argument of, especially in context of what Alan Moore is talking about, because if I could use an example like Thor is, and I'm talking about like the abstract Thor, not Marvel's Thor. Thor is a character that has existed in human history for a really, really, really long time. And to the point where lots of people have a different idea about the minutia of Thor. Maybe your Thor is the Marvel Thor, but maybe your Thor is God of War Thor. Maybe your Thor is the more classic iteration of Thor. They're all Thor, and they all have the general hallmarks of what Thor is, but they're slightly different. The same way that Batman can be different to everybody, but there are still the core tenets of what makes a Batman story. That doesn't necessarily require it to be Bruce Wayne or even the Bruce Wayne that you know. It only requires it to meet the qualifications of what Batman is, which we all know, and that the Dark Knight gave a clear foundation. That is why Alan Moore is so obsessed with the Dark Knight.
I'm trying to think of like modern, I guess, examples of this being done right. And the first thing that keeps jumping in my mind is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King. You know, Dan even in the chat brings up, you know, Tom King owes a lot to this thinking. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is a very definitive, out of time Supergirl story. That its goal is to tell a good Supergirl story, context of what the comics are, be damned. And it could exist anywhere, really. And honestly, and they're making a fucking movie out of it. So it's doing something right there.
I tend to, I think I've always sort of followed this logic to a degree. I like to, especially with like Batman, I like to sort of make my own timeline as things come along. Like, you know, at a certain point, Hush and Batman Fugitive and Batman War Games all happen in one Bruce Wayne lifetime. But then at a certain point, it stops. You know, that version of Bruce Wayne is mine, but it's nobody else's. And it can keep going for other people.
Right. Like you have your own headcanon, I guess.
Yeah, headcanon, yeah.
It's funny when you bring it up. I don't think of DC in continuity, honestly. Like Marvel, I'm very strict on Marvel continuity in my mind. Like that is linear. With DC, it's like, no, these are stories in my head.
I think I don't know if that's how DC has trained its audience to think, though.
Fair. And it could just be how I got into comics too with DC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I got into Hush. I read Morrison's Batman. I was very cherry picky with getting into DC. So like that maybe dictates the puzzle in my head that is DC.
Yeah.
I also think Marvel works a lot harder to maintain their timeline.
Sure.
With the sliding time scale being almost atomic at this point. Dan Trudeau points out on Twitch that the universe is the foundation, not the characters.
Right, exactly. The myth of Marvel is the universe. The myth of DC is the characters. It's no surprise that Marvel does have to have a sliding scale because almost all of Marvel's characters' origins are rooted in a certain time.
Yep.
Whereas for DC, they're not. Superman's ship could have crash landed in any year. Doesn't even matter. That's why they could put it in Russia in Superman Red Sun. It doesn't matter where he landed.
Yeah.
Batman's parents could die watching Zorro, or they could die watching House Party. Matter what the movie was. Like it doesn't matter.
I want to see that book. Yeah. it's a Batman dies at a screening of Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fucking Shrek.
Hey now. You're an all-star.
I wanted to go over at least one more quote from Alan Moore because I think it underscores what we're talking about right now. And I love it so much because we forget that these people are geniuses. We forget that these people are magicians. And we forget how much they understand this stuff that we consume so readily and easily. So Moore said the following. And again, this is how we understand his mentality. Quote, as I mentioned in my introduction to Frank's Dark Knight, one of the things that prevents superhero stories from ever attaining the status of true modern myths, of legends, is that they are open-ended. An essential quality of a legend is that the events in it are clearly defined in time. Robin Hood is driven to become an outlaw by the injustices of King John and his minions. That is his origin. He meets Little John, Friar Tuck, and all the rest, and forms the Merry Men. He wins the tournament in disguise. He falls in love with Maid Marian and thwarts the Sheriff of Nottingham. That is his career, including his love interest, major villains, and the formation of a superhero group that he is a part of. He lives to see the return of good King Richard and is finally killed by a woman, firing the last arrow to mark the place where he shall be buried. That is his resolution. You can apply the same paradigm to King Arthur Davy Crockett, or Sherlock Holmes with equal success. You cannot apply it to most comic book characters because, in order to meet the commercial demands of continuing series, they can never have a resolution. Indeed, they find it difficult to embrace any of the changes in life that the passage of time brings about for these very same reasons, making them finally less than fully human, as well as falling far short of the true myth. Pause. Where are we at with Spider-Man comics today?
Mary Jane is just his friend now.
Worse, his sister.
Spider-Man is stuck.
Yep.
We've seen it all.
Yep.
What happened between Spider-Man's origin and now that informs his end?
But you know where
we don't know because he doesn't have an end.
Ultimates
we don't know the ending.
Ultimates did, and then Miles came about, and it worked. You know, like
So that's wild. This is exactly what I've been saying since day one of our podcast, and I've never been able to put my finger on why. And this is exactly it.
I think now your beard's going to start growing even faster now, Kel, because of this.
Yeah,
the mental link has been established. You're closest to him too, so the side effects are going to be greater.
Invest in hair ties.
So what it sounds like he's advocating for is Elseworlds. Elseworlds as the proper way of telling a story in a way, right?
Even just evolution.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess my interpretation is he's trying to provide a framework for how at least DC can have their cake and eat it too. How DC can provide the Dark Knight Returns of basically how the whole entire DC universe can get the Dark Knight Returns treatment. That is exactly what Twilight of the Gods is. And as we get deeper into this proposal over the coming weeks, you're going to understand exactly how I mean that. I'm not even saying that the proposal's good. I actually don't think DC would have ever published it. But I think that it's fascinating despite that, because it could have been reworked and it could have been made into something that would have been palatable for DC. The ask on Alan Moore's part is tremendous.
Sure.
Absolutely gargantuan. I shudder to even give you a hint, but I will give you one because I need you to understand how different this is. There is a storyline here, a piece of this proposal that is not very different from something that Jeff Loeb did in Ultimates 3 that involves Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch that everybody knows about.
Incest.
He goes far. He goes far.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a heavy book. It's a dark book. It's Alan Moore pulling no punches. I'm saying book. It's a proposal. The book never actually got released. But
I got a question.
Yeah.
With the proposal, does DC still have the rights of the proposal, and can they make this book?
Man, oh man, there is so much to talk about.
Okay, all right.
That's a huge part of it. Remember, I said this proposal was a battleground for Alan Moore and DC after 89, after he left.
Huh.
Because this story is so much bigger than you realize.
This could have been Watchmen 2.
Yeah. Oh, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
This makes me really want, and it's antithetical to Alan Moore, but like an Alan Moore biopic, you know?
Sure.
Just a creative man driven into being a jaded mess because of big business in a way.
Mm-hmm.
There's my screenplay I get to write. Here we go.
Get started. Dan says that's not what the Dark Knight was. It wasn't an ending in the future. It's an end to an older version of the character. Okay, so let's say that the language that we're using isn't appropriate. I'll reframe it.
Well, he was actually responding directly to C.W. Gordon, who said it sounds awfully like Zack Snyder's DC.
But I thought Dan had made that comment earlier that
he did. It's an ending for the Silver Age Batman set in the 80s.
Right. Let's put ourselves in the 80s. Okay?
Because this is right here. Wait.
This is from the 80s, so let's get rid of our 2023 brains for a moment.
Gladly.
A story that shows Batman in the future, or Batman's ending, an older, grizzled Bruce Wayne, an older Superman, all these characters being aged, would be perceived by someone at that time as a future story for Batman. That's the perception. Reality or otherwise is really not relevant. What Alan Moore is trying to get at is that this is a definitive close for the Batman character. That's what he's trying to get at. And that it establishes a baseline from which future creators can work backwards from. Not that you even have to acknowledge it in any way. You shouldn't necessarily tease it out. But if you're lost, if you're like, well, what are the core tenets of Batman? Or what are the core tenets of this one and that one? Where do they go so that I know where they are, where they need to be? This is the point of reference.
Like, in case of emergency, introduce the mutants.
So that's kind of the idea. And being able to apply that across the board for all of DC. Which sounds like an impossible deal.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this. Regardless of what you think about what we're going to talk about in the future regarding how this shakes out, I think Alan Moore's plan was extremely ambitious and interesting, and it might have worked. It might have worked. I don't think DC would have allowed it to be published this way, but if they did, it might have worked. It's possible. Last week, we established the why of Twilight of the Superheroes. We know that Alan Moore wanted Twilight of the Superheroes to be like Dark Knight Returns is to Batman, the end game of the myth of DC. He wanted to establish a future for DC's world and characters that gives the creators the ability to work back from, and it solves the problem of superhero characters not ever getting a proper ending to their stories, but it also allows mainline continuity to continue unabated. Alan Moore wanted to give DC their cake and eat it too. He wanted to establish an endpoint for these characters, but also make it so that there was nothing that happened that would alter the, at the time, present of DC's comics in any way unless they wanted it to. This week, we're going to discuss the framing device that Moore uses to establish the link between, at that time, current DC and the future that Twilight of the Superheroes would show us, just how concerned Moore was with stepping on the toes of other creators and how to handle those who didn't want their stories to cross over. And we're going to get into the background of this future and what this future looks like. So, to start, Moore talked about how Twilight of the Superheroes would be a Secret Wars-esque hit and how it could even introduce new characters. And I was fascinated by this idea. Last week, he actually specifically referenced the Secret Wars and the success of that in the toy sale and all the different things that they were able to accomplish with that. And it's worth keeping in mind that all the heroes fighting heroes stuff and I don't necessarily want to say the modern blueprint for an event because that's not accurate, but Secret Wars, I think, is maybe, and I'm open to being corrected, the first event. The first, let's take heroes and smash them together event. The first event that had a drive of let's sell toys, let's sell merchandise, let's do all of those things.
Like a packaged deal beyond the comics. Like, how do you extend that through a larger corporation?
Right. And
Sure.
Alan Moore, especially if you consider it from a multimedia standpoint.
Okay.
And Alan Moore was clearly inspired by that. So he said, in order to make the central storyline comprehensible to a wider audience than the trivia mesmerized hordes of comic fandom, the link with the present can be ignored and effectively severed, leaving only a powerful and simple central story idea, that of an apocalypse for superfolk played out by warring factions against the fascinating backdrop of a drastically altered future, with all the plotting, romance, and intrigue of one of those storied historical dramas about warring factions amongst the Medici or whatever. This central idea that of a war and all its spectacular ramifications, making it ideal material for a role-playing game. Perhaps the ultimate superhero role-playing game. It also lends itself nicely to a wide range of other spin-off projects, including those in the toy soldier range. The apocalyptic mood of the series, tied in with current preoccupations and encapsulated in a phrase, like the previously mentioned, quote, waiting for Twilight, could work nicely with regard to the advertising campaign, as well as giving us a range of credible adult items as badges, posters, and t-shirts.
Yo, my man out here building out the Joes. Give the guy the keys, bro. What?
It's so wild seeing how like 80s boardroom capitalist Alan Moore was.
It's phenomenal. It's incredible. Like there's such foresight and future planning, which is the thing that you need to do. Is you need to look beyond the next event. How does it tie in through these larger products? It's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But I like seeing that, and then where he is now. It's just like, yo, what?
Oof.
Yeah.
Skyrocketed down.
Dude called the Dungeons and Dragons boom pretty early here, saying we should make a tabletop game out of this too.
That'd be rad.
Yeah.
This would have been right around the original D&D boom.
Yeah.
The one that made my parents, worry about Satan and the gays and
Were they part of what was it? Was it SAD or something like that?
mine weren't. No.
Dungeons and Dragons, I think. Yeah.
Reminds me of Stranger Things.
Mad. It was Mad.
Season.
Mothers Against
Drunk Driving.
Yeah.
Is that what MAD stood
That's
for?
what MAD stood for.
Oh, okay. Well, who knows?
There needs to be an organization for that. Like, we're against drunk driving.
You think?
So
No, I lived in Buffalo. You're right.
So Alan Moore also talked about the possibility of a superhero movie based on Twilight of the Superheroes, which I thought was really funny, because this is way pre the idea of superhero movies as like a big franchise, I guess.
Right.
At that point, obviously, we had the Superman movie by Dick Donner and things like that. This is pre Batman 89.
Wow, dude. He had it planned out. This is
Right.
foresight.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny that we will never get this movie, but in a few years, we'll be getting a Secret Wars movie, which this whole thing was sort of loosely inspired by from a multimedia standpoint.
Mm.
I just thought that was cute. He also talked about the way that this could introduce new characters. And he said, we could introduce a character who hasn't been seen yet. Say Barbara Randall's proposal for a female Flash. That could be presented in Twilight as an old, established character who's been in the Justice League for years. When the character appears on the newsstands in her own title some months later, this should strike a suitably ominous resonance back to the Twilight storyline. Is it all coming true? Even if it doesn't all come true in every detail, even if, say, she never joins the Justice League, mightn't it most of it come true? Does that remind you guys of anything? 5G, maybe?
Hey.
5G in all the studies, LA Times causes massive mutation and cancer.
I'll explain the link. Alan Moore was obsessed. If you read this, he was obsessed with the idea of setting up an end for DC.
Yeah.
He truly believed that in order for DC to stand the test of time, it had to move forward. And it had to show people, just like we see with the myths from Norse mythology and even religion, if you consider the Bible, the character, or not the character, I'm sorry, Jesus has an endpoint. I don't want to be disrespectful. Jesus has an end point and a beginning that we are aware of. Last week, I used the example of Robin Hood, a character who has a very clear-cut beginning, middle, and end, which is something that superheroes do not have. Alan Moore saying, look, the beginning part, we got that. The middle part, I can't help that. You motherfuckers are intent on making money forever off of these characters by keeping us stuck in the middle. What I can do is give these characters an end. So for everybody who wants to be stuck in the middle, we could do that. But for everybody who wants to know how it ends, that's what I'm giving them. absolutely obsessed. Dan Didio clearly felt the same way because his big idea was to give an end to the traditional Batman and Superman and to create a way to bring about the new age of pushing things forward. To me, those are coming from the same place. Was Dan Didio's idea as eloquent as Moore's? Maybe not, but Dan Didio is not a writer who's celebrated. Moore's one of the greatest of all time.
Do you think, because like this whole Twilight of the Superheroes, it's almost mythological in and of itself, and inside baseball comics. Do you think that influenced Didio's thinking a bit, or it's just like lightning just striking twice in similar ways?
I am of the belief that a lot of stories that we have seen are inspired by this.
Yeah, fair.
And I have that saved for later, but I'll tease you a little bit. What is Kingdom Come about?
Yep. That's the first thing that I thought of,
Sure,
even
okay.
last week. Yeah.
Yep.
Man, I love Alan Moore when he talks about these characters with like passion.
Mm-hmm.
This dude is in it, man.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. I want to get into it because we haven't actually talked about how we get to this world. So here's the setup. It all starts with the Time Trapper. Raise your hand if you know who the Time Trapper is.
Oh, surely.
Time trap.
I didn't know.
I mean, like that sounds like a Flashpoint character,
Go ahead, Kale. You might have it.
No, I don't think so. And
Go
to
for
me,
it.
it sounds like Snapper Carr from the ancient Justice League characters when their headquarters were in that mountain.
So I will give you guys the answer. Time Trapper is a Legion of Superheroes villain. Oh, yeah. Harris, Isaiah Os in the chat just got it right.
Wow. Yo.
Nerd.
Time Trapper is an ancient Legion of Superheroes villain, and the basis for this story, which completely reminds me of ridiculous characters like Psycho Pirate, and like whenever there's a major event, there's always a crappy character from
Beyonder.
DC who's at the start of it.
Even Marvel with Beyonder. That dude's ridiculous.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess I was referring more to like those like D-list villains that DC loves to put at the
Sure.
forefront of
Yeah.
these things. But yes, I think Beyonder also fits that bill.
So
So
you need to put some respect on the Psycho Pirate's name. Thank you very much.
I actually like the Psycho Pirate, but
I
all I was
love
trying to
the
say
Psycho
is
Pirate.
like,
Yeah.
Come on, right? So Time Trapper establishes a quote temporal fluke field within the time streams, and that lures and traps time travelers, in this case, the Legion of Superheroes and Rip Hunter, within it, largely preventing them from being able to escape its clutches and leaving them, in some cases, stranded on one of the several different Earths that have sprung up within the relative location of the time trap. So this is like, the Legion of Superheroes, Rip Hunter, these are characters who traditionally are in the time stream, going to different realities and things like that. And Time Trapper is setting a trap for them so that they're stuck. And the byproduct of this trap is that it actually recreates Earths from the multiverse that were removed from reality after Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this opens up the door for the return of the multiverse already, which is something that Alan Moore criticizes consistently, that the multiverse is gone. He talks about how the Dark Knight verse could be a thing. He doesn't use that language, but he talks about how we could see that continue on. And maybe that's a world that continues to live. He references several other worlds that, are no longer in existence. He also talks about how you could use this to dump some crap that you don't want anymore. He specifically references, and I know my boys are going to get this one. He specifically references a rainbow Batman that they can dump into the fluke.
Dope.
Yeah.
Love Rainbow Batman.
Mm-hmm.
It's up there with like a giant kaiju turtle, Jimmy Olsen.
Gosh, DC was wacky.
Black Lois Lane.
Yep.
That was amazing.
I'm going to Philly next weekend, and I know one of the comic shops in Philly has that on display for sale. That issue of Superman. It's
Incredible.
tempting.
Love it. So while Rip Hunter is in the future, he meets John Constantine, who tells him he must go back in time to that time's DC's present in order to warn the superheroes of the fate that awaits them in hopes they may prevent it. Now, this represents the framing device of Twilight of the superheroes. This is not intended to be the story. This is how we get into the story. Or talks a lot about how, that framing device is meant to sort of be the bridge between, at that time, present DC and the future, but to be fluid enough that when you want to tell this story on the big screen or you want to translate it into multimedia, you could take that out.
Is this the first Zero issue?
No way.
And so with all that established, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the world. Let's talk about the story. What is this?
You teased it in a weird way last week, Sean. So.
Just you wait, he said.
Sorry?
No, he's saying just you wait.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to Alan Moore's words for a little bit and let him explain what we're looking at. The world of Twilight is not a world where the superheroes have deliberately taken over, but one where they have inherited the Earth almost by default, as various social institutions started to crumble in the face of accelerating social change, leaving the superheroes in the often unwilling position of being a sort of new royalty. Even though government and civic authority has all but disintegrated, the various areas of America each have their own coteries of protecting superfolk to look after them. And the superheroes have thus tended to group into clans, each looking after a certain province. There are numerous houses of this nature, dividing America into a kind of feudal barony system effectively, in terms of politics, if not in terms of technology, which is as advanced as one might expect by 2000 AD. I do want to say that the future that he's referencing is about 2010.
Okay.
It's between 2000 and 2010. So from 1980, whatever. So just keep that in your mind. I love this. I love it so much. Let's break it down. Moore is saying that we're not looking at a world that has gone into the apocalypse because of, nuclear attack. He talks about how he specifically does not want to do what he did in WATCHMEN, and that was becoming passé because it's been done to death.
Man.
It's not that. It's not Parallax. It's not Superman gone bad. It's apathy and atrophy. It's the proliferation of superheroes and people with powers creating a world that has alienated human beings from it to the degree that they are now willingly subservient to superheroes because they don't believe that they can live without them, because the entirety of their history since the proliferation of Superman has been that they need superheroes to protect them from the threats of the world. Think about DC Comics. What human threats are there? Forget not powers, regular human threats.
Global warming.
It's just really Amanda Waller, really, and even then, it's like she needs
people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you also have like Batman villains, and it's like meh.
I guess Lex is probably the biggest threat
to humanity.
I would say editorial, probably.
Right, like Lex would certainly count. He's I don't even know. I don't even know that Lex is a threat in that way. Like, he's not trying to end Earth.
True. Yeah.
Like Joker just wants to watch the world burn. He doesn't necessarily care to end Earth. All the threats to Earth are alien or powered, or powered or supernatural somehow, not nukes. And so when Earth is not at risk of being ended by humans. Humans lose the drive to protect themselves, and they let the heroes do it for them. I think that's brilliant.
Is this under the assumption then that they're also like living in a more idyllic society at that point?
No, because superheroes don't have that ability. You know what I'm saying? Like, superheroes don't have the knowledge or the intelligence to run a government. They know how to protect people. So what we're looking at is a world that is atrophying because it has no one's looking over the garden anymore. No one's tending to the garden. Eden is overgrown. And it's
the beginning of Kingdom Come.
Smells
Exactly.
like Doomsday Clock in a way too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, it's superheroes fighting each other for misunderstandings, if not the fun of it, because they have to do what they have to do.
Yep.
It's also a good, what we were talking about previously. It's also like it. This is why Civil War would never work in DC. It's just the DNA of this world is this what Alan Moore is talking about is the ultimate end of it.
Exactly. I'll go back to Alan's words now. Alan said, what I want to show is a world which, having lived through the terrors of the 50s through the early 90s with overhanging terror of a nuclear Armageddon that seemed inevitable at the time, has found itself faced with the equally inconceivable and terrifying notion that there might not be an apocalypse, that mankind might actually have a future, and might thus be faced with the terrifying prospect of having to deal with it rather than allowing itself the indulgence of getting rid of that responsibility with a convenient mushroom cloud or 900. Following the predictions made by Alvin Toffler and other eminent futurologists, I want to show a future in which everything from the family structure to the economy is decentralizing into an entirely new form that, while it might ultimately be better suited for the survival in the changed conditions in life of the 21st century, is in a constant and incomprehensible state of flux and chaos for those living through it, caught in one of the most violent historical niches where one mode of society changes to another, such as the Industrial Revolution. The people of our world find themselves going through an upheaval, more abstract and bizarre, but every bit as violent, and their institutions crumble in the face of the wave of social change. They find themselves clinging to the various superhero clans who represent their only anchor of stability in this rapidly altering world. Last week, I talked about Alan Moore and his disdain for people, adults, who find solace in superhero comics to escape from their reality, right? Alan Moore is taking that meta and putting it into the book. Humans are now terrified of the way that the world is changing, so they are now giving themselves over to superheroes.
Relinquishing that.
Yes. Which, go ahead.
Sorry, and by virtue of that, have to confront and have to question, well, what does my world look like that?
Exactly.
Damn, dude.
And it turns the superheroes into gods who now have worshipers.
Yo.
They're now myth.
True. Okay.
Again, I can't say it enough. This is brilliant.
More than super gods. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So I want to give you guys a teaser because we are coming to the end of this edition, but I want to give you guys a teaser of two of the houses that encompass the New World Order of DC. When I say New World Order, I'm not implying 5G turn the frogs gay. I'm talking about the new way of things.
In this context, within, yeah.
The superheroes have divided themselves into houses. They're not allies. They're also not necessarily at war. This is just the way things are. So we have the Houses of Steel, or rather the House of Steel, the House of Thunder, House of Titans, House of Mystery, House of Secrets, House of Justice, House of Tomorrow, and the House of Lanterns.
Okay. Wait. Do the first three again?
Okay. House of Steel, House of Thunder, and House of Titans.
Titans. Fucker
Why,
Titans.
why are you
of the
questioning
teen
that one?
variety.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much more sense. I'm an idiot. Oh, I'm like, what the fuck are Titans? God.
Yet he could tell you could think he could talk on Nightwing earlier in the show.
Oh, dumb bitch.
Steel. I'm assuming Wonder Woman in team. Yeah.
Maybe the
Wonder
Man of
Woman?
Steel, Marco.
Of
The
who?
Wonder Woman of Steel.
No, but I'm just saying like Steel, like warring.
It's Superman, Marco. Oh my.
No, but he
This
said
this motherfucker thought he could talk on Nightwing.
wait, but the last two you had Green Lantern and something else that was I thought Superman related.
House of Tomorrow and House of Lanterns.
Tomorrow is Superman. That's easy. So Steel has to be something else.
Sean, what's the House of Steel?
All right.
Yeah,
You know
fucking
what?
shut you up. Yeah, okay.
You know what?
No,
Fuck you.
you
Give
did
me
it.
that
You
one,
did it
alright?
because I know
Okay.
the answer
Hey,
to this.
you know what? Fuck me. You're right. I'll give you that one.
All right. Well, here's the answer.
Oh,
I'll leave it. I'll leave it. I'll leave it to Moore. If I change my mind, he says that this House of Steel would likely be in New York. But he says if I change my mind, it could be outside America altogether and set in the Arctic Circle, based around a new fortress of solitude. This is because the House of Steel consists of the clan founded by Superman. We have
The
Superman
Man of
himself, a morally troubled figure who doesn't know what's best to do about the chaos he sees surrounding him, but who has come to accept that the houses provide the only real permanent structure in a destabilizing world and are thus important to maintain. Superman has married and raised a couple of kids, and the person that he is married to is
Bruce Wayne.
Wonder
Lana Lang.
Oh.
Swing.
it is definitely Wonder Woman.
Yeah. He said that.
Oh,
Yeah, I did say that last week. Who has had an identity change to Superwoman to accommodate her new stature. We see the genuine and powerful love between these two in the face of the perils of the world surrounding them and the desire to do what's best. They are also troubled by their two offspring. One of these is a new Superboy, and he's about 18 when the story opens, and he's real bad news. The other child is a less delinquent Supergirl, a new one who, like Superboy, has been born of the union between Superman and Wonder Woman, but who is much kinder and gentler, more her mother's child. Having three members in the Superman class and Wonder Woman herself, they're obviously a clan to be reckoned with.
This is
So
very
not-
Game of Thronesy, very Dark Knights of Steel too. So
oh yes.
Dark Knights of Steel, yet another book that I was going to bring up later that I believe was directly influenced by this.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Although you could obviously make your arguments, it came out after Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones,
Sure.
big deal.
I would argue that Alan Moore stuff is just archetypal, and that even subconsciously it could influence things.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Whether you
Yeah.
even know about it or not, it's DC. It's an understanding of the world.
Does he say who House of Secrets is?
No, he left that one a secret.
It's all here, Marco.
And you're not. And that's next week. Ah.
But I want to give you guys one more house because these two houses are the basis of the big story that we're going to get into next week as we dive even deeper. And this is the House of Thunder.
Ooh.
I don't care.
You will. I'm going to refer back to Moore now. The House of Thunder is the other major power and possesses members with power in the same class as that of the House of Steel. The House of Thunder is composed of the Marvel family plus additions. Captain Marvel himself is the patriarch and is, if possible, even more estranged and troubled by the state of the world than Superman is. Perhaps because the Marvel family are having to come to terms with the difficulties of having human alter egos along with everything else. A point I'll return to an hour in the plot. That's, again, so fucking brilliant. They're the gods and the humans at the same time.
He doesn't say whether
Wild.
it's Billy Batson still as a kid, though, right? It
I'm
could
not
be
done.
Okay.
Oh damn! Fuck yeah!
So referring back to Moore, alongside Captain Marvel, there is Mary Marvel, who the captain has married, more to form a bona fide clan in opposition to that of Superman than for any other reason.
I think they're cousins. I don't know about that.
Well, there's the Game of Thrones connection,
Oh,
incest.
they're just they were adopted at the same. Like they're not by blood.
No, at this point they might have been. It would have been blood.
Does that shock you guys?
That they're married?
Mhm.
Not especially.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No,
No.
you're gonna say something that's gonna gross me up. I feel.
I mean,
It's
what do you mean like a dud? Like
Like
it's an
that's not
interesting.
that's not that compelling.
It's an interesting
Oh,
point.
here we
but
go.
oh, this guy, he's you
All right, listen. I'm going to preface this by saying I can't explain why Moore wanted to do this, but this is what Moore wanted. It's a bombshell. If you don't want to hear it, it's a little gross. If you don't want to hear it, scroll ahead.
They're in a 3-way polyamorous couple with Tawny the Tight.
I'll refer back to Moore.
Yif.
There is also Captain Marvel Jr., now an adult superhero, every bit as powerful and imposing as Captain Marvel in his prime, but under the eternal shadow of a senior protege. To complicate things, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel are having an affair behind the Captain's back, which has every bit as dire consequences as in the Arthurian legend.
Yeah.
The other member of the Marvel clan is Mary Marvel Jr., the daughter of Captain and Mary Marvel Sr. Mary Jr. is fated to be a part of a planned arranged marriage to the nasty delinquent Superboy during the course of our story in order to form a powerful union between the two houses. Peripheral to all this, but perhaps interesting, somewhere in the House of Thunder, which rises up from the middle of LA over the course of over on the West Coast, there are quarters occupied by those characters from the Fawcett universe who can no longer cope with life in an increasingly realistic and difficult outside world. Those include a sad and aging Mr. Talkie Tawny and perhaps even Mr. Mind. Please don't laugh. I think I can make it work.
Oh, that's in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
The houses of Steel and Thunder face each other across the country, with the various houses and constellations gathered somewhere in between, vying for the power that's left over after the two major houses have had their share.
So hold on. Captain Marvel Jr. is still the child of Mary and Cap.
Nope.
Oh, different
Captain
person.
Marvel Jr.
That's
essentially his
different.
Robin.
He was never that.
Oh, okay.
So
Never
we have what it feels to me like incest.
It's not.
Like whether they're blood or
Some
not,
level. Yeah.
they grew up together and
Right.
it feels like incest between Captain Marvel and Mary Marvel. And then when you tack on Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, that for me took it to a whole other level, to where it just feels like this incestuous mix of characters who are only mating and being together because of the state of the world and not really any other reason.
I mean, it's not incestuous, but it is three people who all grew up together.
Yeah.
At the same time, which
I don't think Freddie Freeman, Captain Marvel Jr. was related. I think he was just a friend.
Yeah, you are correct.
Yeah. I guess what I'm getting. Yeah.
You're right. Billy Batson though and Mary Marvel, I'm pretty positive that's their cousins.
Moore was going all out.
I like this as though as political, not political drama, but interpersonal drama that helps to then affect, considering the fact that Captain Marvel's already disillusioned about the world. These are the things that'll push him over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
These are those emotional beats.
Oh, even worse.
Oh, yep. I'm reading the same thing.
It gets way worse.
Oh no,
They're actually brother and sister.
In the traditional Shazam stories, Mary is Billy's once lost twin sister, Mary Batson.
We don't know if that's the premise here, right?
Sure.
I mean, unless this is a completely different universe, but you have to remember this premise that Alan Moore has written is 87, 88.
87.
Based on the Fawcett characters, yeah.
And the Fawcett characters have been in DC continuity at this point 50 years.
And according to Wikipedia, it doesn't change until post Final Crisis.
Yeah.
So, this is Game of Thrones.
Manny makes a great point. It makes sense if you think of them as gods, as Alan Moore did. Greek gods were of the same way.
They do be fucking those guys.
Definitely agree with that. I think that this is one of the elements that DC, I talked last week, there's things DC would not have allowed. This is one of them. There's no way that DC would have allowed literal incest in their comics. Obviously, Marvel didn't care 20 years later.
I will say if it's with Alan Moore, he got away with that with Swamp Thing previously. Literally an incest thing pushing against the Comics Code Authority specifically for that. So there's precedent there.
Oh wow, okay. I didn't realize he was into that.
His extra indie stuff is wild, my dude.
Yeah,
Like from Hell?
Oh, was it with the three girls?
Yeah, he's got a great big erotica graphic novels about like your typical sort of Disney heroines, your Alice in Wonderland, your Wendy from Peter Pan.
Yeah.
And it's wild.
Man, fucking quirked up white boy over here. Jeez.
Yeah.
So we've established the why. We've established the what. We've begun to establish the who. We're going to dive deeper into the who next week as we talk about the rest of the houses. We're going to talk more about the subgroups and how it all falls apart. Because
write all this down. It'll be a test at the end.
We're also going to be getting into the beyond the story, because there's a lot of meat. There's the war, the Cold War between Alan Moore and DC that somehow centers not only this premise at some point, but the most unexpected real life guest star in this story, none other than Rich Johnston from Bleeding Cool.
A character in this play?
No. The real life story.
I know. Yeah.
Okay.
In the play of this epic we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
Epic of this creation and this pitch. Yeah. Okay.
Rich Johnston plays a factor, which is unbelievable.
I want to get on the show so bad. I got questions. But
I could see that happening one day. And yeah, we're gonna get into so much more. The other big promise is that next week, I promise we will have images to show you.
Ooh.
Art?
We will have art.
Oh,
Nothing official, but art from artists who were excited about this at the time, who read the pitch and wanted to show what they thought some of these characters might look like. So we will have some art for you guys.
who's a prominent artist? He was probably in the 80s. He's probably working.
Don't look it up.
I'm not looking it up. I'm trying to see. I'm trying to guess who would put something together for him.
Marco, don't say David Gibbons again.
No. It'd probably be he at that point he was working really closely with Rick Veitch. He was art.
Oh yeah.
Who else would be excited for this shit?
Don't think too deeply about it. So this is part 3 of our conversation about Alan Moore's greatest superhero comic story that was never told. If you've been following along, then you know that in our first episode, we dove into the why. Why does Alan Moore want to do this? What is it? What are the inspirations? We're talking about things like The Dark Knight Returns. We're talking about things like Secret Wars. We're talking about things like Crisis on Infinite Earths. Things that inspired Alan Moore to want to tell this story. Also, the idea that these characters, these superheroes, need to become mythological, right? To become the American myth, They need a strong beginning, middle, and end. And he said, well, we know the beginning of Batman. DC is intent on never leaving the middle of Batman. And I can't change that. But in Alan Moore's mind, he says, what I can do is provide an end point for the whole of DC, the same way that The Dark Knight Returns was essentially an endpoint for Batman. And creators can work backwards from this point, and readers will know if they want that concrete answer. How does it end? They can get that. That's what the point of this all was. Last week, we talked about the essential houses. We dove into 2 of the primary houses of superheroes and various characters that will inhabit the world of the Twilight of the Superheroes. And those were, of course, the House of Steel and the House of Thunder. Talked about some really weird things going on with the House of Thunder. Go ahead and listen to the last episode, which are all split out, by the way. And a huge shout out to Arubaro Snake for suggesting that we separate out the Twilight of the Superheroes episodes, deep dives, because those are doing very well for us. And, it's something that I hope people continue to check out. So we're gonna talk on this episode about the rest of the houses. We're gonna give you guys some updates on characters who are not necessarily a part of houses, the central location where a lot of the story will take place, what's up with Batman, and as promised, I will show you guys some artwork that was done by a collaborator of Alan Moore that represents a few of the characters that are in Twilight of the Superheroes. So here we go. We're going to start with the House of Titans. I'm sure you can imagine what the House of Titans is or who's in it, but I'm pretty sure you can't imagine what they're doing now. I'll refer to Alan Moore here. Quote, one of the 2 foremost clans making up this collection of lesser houses is a clan composed of the remains of the Teen Titans, now grown up and a hell of a lot grimmer and more frightening than they ever were in the past. They are led by an adult Nightwing who, trying to emulate and live up to the reputation of the Batman, has become every bit as driven as vicious as his mentor, but who lacks the depth of compassion and understanding that separate the Batman from all the other grim vigilantes. As a result, Nightwing is not an altogether nice character. This isn't helped by the fact that Starfire has been killed some years earlier.
Wait, repeat that?
I said, this isn't helped by the fact that Starfire has been killed some years earlier during a period when all the aliens were being forcibly expelled from Earth by the big powers who feared alien influence moving in to take advantage of the disruption and uncertainty in society. Other Titans who have died include Jericho, while some, including Kid Flash and Wonder Girl, have left the Titans to take up with the other clans, a cause of bitterness among the remaining Titans. So, the Titans represent, in comics, the next wave of heroes, the next step, the mantle passing down, right? These are the would-be main superheroes of the future. If time actually moved forward in DC Comics and people aged normally and things like that, by now, Batman would have retired. Bruce Wayne, rather, would have retired. Nightwing would either take up the mantle or just be Nightwing. But he would be that Batman, right. And so on and so forth. Just the same way, like right now in DC, the Titans are going to be the main superhero team. That's what should happen in DC, right? Like that's supposed to be their future. Alan Moore is taking those characters who represent the future and basically saying, yeah, shit didn't go too well for them. And now Nightwing is a jaded, bitter, angry character that has very little to do, in my opinion, with the Nightwing that we all know and love. How does this
big time?
How does this sort of idea make you guys feel?
I hate it.
I don't like it. Yeah.
Especially for Nightwing.
Yeah.
When you started that description of his character, I was very much like, ooh, Alan Moore has already lost the plot. That man doesn't know who this character is at all. But I think when you put all those events and just, hit them one by one, domino effect, I think there's a degree of that could make sense.
Like it could work, but I don't like the direction for the character regardless. Like
Yeah.
I can see the machinations there, but it feels like a stretch for him.
Yeah. It's hard for me to accept the idea that Nightwing could ever turn.
Yeah.
We talked about, would Nightwing be pro registration or anti or whatever, and I can never see him wavering from just good. Just whatever's good, whatever's best for people, whatever's best for humanity, being a smiling, happy, person for the most part, trying to inspire good.
The heart of DC, right?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yep.
And so to
He's been
see
positioned.
the main character, what I believe to be the main character of DC, turn heel in this way, it's hard to accept. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, Alan Moore doesn't stop there. I will go refer back to Moore's words here. So he talks about Hawk and Dove, and he says that Hawk may be renamed Warhawk and lives up to his name, a sort of super Rambo who Nightwing tends to use as a human weapon.
Jeez.
There is also the Cyborg. Victor Stone has had some rejection problems with his bioelectronic parts in the time that's elapsed since our present day. And as a result, more and more of his body has been replaced by mechanical parts, including one lobe of his brain.
Whoa.
He is forced into considering the frightening question of when exactly something stops being a person and starts being a machine. I think Marco confronts himself with that every day.
Every day, dude.
Quote, how much do you have to take out and replace before there's just a robot left?
That's some more shit right there, dude.
Yeah.
That fascinating. I would love that. And it's interesting because my image of Cyborg is the cartoon, like Teen Titans, and in that he has like part of his brain already, but I'm thinking back then it would have just been, his like little band across the forehead and just like part of his skin or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think so.
We just got our first ever super chat.
Oh
Damn.
shit.
That's so awesome. Thank you, Atomic Hound. He says, first ever super chat. Doesn't feel like Alan Moore wanted to crap on Wolfman and Perez, turn Nightwing, and diminish Crisis. Yes. Yes. In both previous episodes, I talked about how I felt in reading Alan Moore's words on Crisis on Infinite Earths that he did not actually like the event. That he felt that the event hurt DC and that there was a part of him that wanted to undo what was done there. He doesn't explicitly say that. That's what I interpreted. And I do believe that taking these characters specifically and turning them on their heads so radically while also undoing the end of the multiverse was Alan Moore's way of rejecting Crisis on Infinite Earths. I do believe that. Thank you so much for that, Atomic Hound. Really appreciate it. And by the way, this all happened so fast. We didn't get the chance to set up cool pop-up images or anything like that for super chats, but all that's coming. So stay tuned for that stuff. Thank you. Let me go on because I want to tell you guys about the rest of the Titans because we're not done. One thing that helps take Stone's mind off of his own problems is that he must keep an eye on the Changeling, who has serious problems of his own. When the terrors of the world finally became too much for his hokey, lighthearted facade, the Changeling did what he always said he would do. He went crazy. Not completely crazy, but more and more these days he stays in animal form, or worse, in some awful halfway form between the human and the animal. Worse still, increasingly these days he is starting to adapt the forms of animals that don't exist outside of the increasingly tortured confines of his own mind. Before the story is out, he will have adopted a new identity, calling himself the Chimera.
Oh, what?
That's happened in continuity.
Oh, really?
Somewhere along the line, yeah.
it happened very, very, very recently. In fact, it happened right after Dark Crisis. Remember how in Dark Crisis, I think he gets shot by Deathstroke or something bad happens to him and he's incapacitated? They're able to bring him back, but he stays in animal form because he's traumatized by the events that happened to him.
That's right. It was a backup in one of the issues we read.
It was a backup.
Superman ones, yeah.
Yes.
I think in the Teen Titans book that Jeff Johns did post Infinite Crisis, the Titans are shot to the future somehow or another. No, the future Titans are brought back, is what it is. Okay. And it's like Tim Drake is Batman, and I think they've left. Beast Boy has just decided to stay in animal form, if I'm remembering that correctly.
I like these sort of darker takes. I don't like that Moore is so cynical about the world and how it's playing out with some of these things. Like they're heroes, and I feel like he's at this point, now that we're describing the characters and where they're at, this feels like, an extension of Watchmen and his cynicism therein about the world and how it could exist. But I think the Cyborg stuff's interesting. I think he has interesting concepts for the characters. I might disagree with some of them here and there, but I think he's thought them through to a point where it'll benefit his story.
Right.
You got to remember too, this is late 80s.
Right.
I mean, that's, prime Thatcher time in England. And he's he's based in a more rural town in the north, I believe, which was like Thatcher would have cut off the north with her own hands if she could have. She would have gnawed it off.
Wow.
Like, she hated the poor and she hated the north. She very famously said she wanted Liverpool to fall off into the sea.
Yo, what?
Like people, like Thatcher is nuts.
Wow.
When you really look into like the conservatism there. So, I mean, when you think about like Alan Moore's philosopher king in the YouTube chat says grimdark, that's where a lot of it comes from, is the political commentary, because late 80s Britain was drowning.
Wow. That's good context. And I think, Alan Moore's sort of what we interpret as his like cynicism and skepticism and things like that is clearly as informed by his opinions about people that read comic books and comic book characters as it is his own life experience and what he was dealing with at that time, as Kale points out. So I think all of the context of who Alan Moore is as a person and what he went through and what he's experienced is relevant to discussing Twilight of the Superheroes, because it's all there. It's there in Watchmen too.
So, Sylv mentions that you can see it in the B for Vendetta author's notes and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The last Titan that we need to talk about is Raven.
Oh, it's gonna be good, dude. I'm like at the edge of my seat at this point,
because you never know, right?
Yeah, I don't know where they're going.
So I'll refer back to Moore. Raven is now an aging, very dignified sorceress. She stays with the Titans out of loyalty for the way they stayed with her in the past when she had troubles, but increasingly she finds herself drawn to the tempting notion of leaving the House of Titans and moving into one of the other houses, which is far more suited for her. This being the next house on our agenda for discussing, which is the House of Mystery. So I think that's interesting, because I think that Raven continuing to be loyal to the Titans despite not liking where they're going, I would say that probably fits the character.
I think so. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's the only one we've talked about so far where like he actually hit the nail on the head.
Of what is familiar.
Sure, right.
I think he does pretty well with Changeling and Cyborg as well. Well, and the Starfire death. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Would is Changeling an actual name that Beast Boy goes by?
That was his name before he got into the Titans. Yeah, when he was with Doom Patrol was Changeling.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Exposing my lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
I've never proclaimed to be a DC aficionado. I don't mind being wrong or not knowing.
Does getting rid of Starfire feel lazy? Like, I would have liked to see where that plays out as well. Like she's because she's an alien, right? So she would have been part of that wave of how do we now deal with removing a Titan from Earth, knowing that this is like a mandate that has been agreed upon across the board. Like, that's an interesting wrinkle in his own idea, and I wonder if it's not just a way to not have to deal with like talking that through.
What do you mean?
Well, because earlier you said that there was this Earth-wide mandate to remove all aliens from Earth, but she is an alien, but she's still part of the Titans. And if this is now a kingdom, right, it's easier to deal with her having died to affect Nightwing than it is to have her live and have to discuss whether she remains as part of the Titans or if she has to leave and deal with that separation.
My answer to that is that Starfire, the very tension that you're talking about is exactly why she's dead. Because you wouldn't have just been able to expel her from the equation without resistance from the Titans, because she is one. But the other houses are clearly, at least the ones we've talked about so far, much, much more powerful. And this is an agenda that everybody has. So you'll hear more about how this plays out, but you'll notice Superman is also an alien. But ain't nobody take him out of the equation.
Word! Oh shit! Okay, cool. We're cool.
I also think the death of Starfire, like we touched on how, like, or I touched on how that would piss Nightwing the fuck off.
Right.
But like, you got to think, like, she, along with Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven, like, they're the core Titans. Robin has his own things going on. They don't.
Right.
They're their own little clique. So to have her be like the heart of the Titans, to an extent, like, that crushes a lot of optimism that Starfire really provides, and really drives them to a place where they will fight.
And I think people would, there are people who would say that this is an instance of fridging. I don't have any type of resistance to that argument, although I don't feel like the concept of fridging is always inherently a negative or bad thing. I think, sometimes death is the catalyst of story, or it can move characters forward. In this case, that's what Moore was doing. I don't think he had some agenda against Starfire, although I will say, if you believe that he was frustrated by Crisis on Infinite Earths and how that went, and maybe didn't love the Titans, killing the heart of the team, maybe that was a shot. Who knows?
Revenge.
That's something we can't answer. But that's the House of Titans.
That was cool.
That is the House of Titans. We got more. We got several more. And I'm going to try to run through these because, there's a lot. House of Mystery is up next. So this has nothing to do with the actual, like, the House of Mystery that, existed before. This is just the name. So I'll refer to more now. This House of Mystery is built around Baron Winter's Georgetown mansion and is the residence of a number of DC supernatural characters. These include Jason Blood, aka the Demon, maybe the Spectre, Zatara.
Yeah.
Who's Zatara? Is it Zatanna?
It's Zatanna's father.
Okay.
Right. Oh, he would have died though. Well, regardless, keep going.
Dr. Fate and a strange amalgam of Baron Winter and Deadman. Baron Winter has had his mind burned out. I love that. He had his mind burned out in a psychic battle some years earlier and is now just an empty shell, except when he's inhabited by the spirit of Boston Brand, who uses the Baron's body as a kind of holiday home in the land of the living. The other person in the residence at this new house of mystery is a reformed Felix Faust. The supernatural presences at the house have very little to do with the outside world and have instead devoted their pooled knowledge and talents to plumbing the depths of the universe's many mysteries, being all but inactive in the world of men.
So for context, Baron in Swamp Thing, both he and Zatara were part of an exorcism that was trying to contain some like larger elemental force, and Zatara bursts into flames, which is why I was confused that he'd be here because he's dead technically. And Baron, there was like some psychic backlash that like just fried him, and he goes brain dead. So that's interesting because that plays into stuff that he has had in the past that he was writing about at that point.
There you go. Okay. Great context. That makes sense.
It says his exact background is unknown, except he has an unexplained connection to the early biblical figures Adam and Eve.
Interesting. Baron?
Yeah.
And by the way, the House of Mystery would have been where Raven felt she wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. You think about someone who's been through what Raven has been through in her life. You think about the fact that the Titans are now a shell of what they were. They don't represent what they represented. And she is more powerful than she's ever been in her life. Why would she want to hang around these people when she can hang around these supernatural forces and, you know, figure out what else the universe has to offer? Earth is cooked. It might as well do something different, right? The House of Secrets is up next. This has nothing to do with the former House of Secrets. This is where the villains are at.
No, fuck.
Yeah, this is where the villains are at. And it features Joker, Luthor, Gorilla Grodd, Captain Cold, Catwoman, Kronos, and Star Sapphire.
Oh.
And Dr. Sivana, and maybe a few other people. Moore was not sure exactly who else would be there. But I think when you look at this reminds me of, like, you know, very 80s, like Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom, that's, yeah.
Those kinds of characters. Moore says the following about this. This house is powerful enough to defend itself against occasional attacks by the other hero-centered clans, but isn't otherwise especially active and thus tends to get left alone, largely because the province that these villains protect, somewhere up in the reaches of Nevada, is just as well looked after as the place controlled by the heroes, whereby hangs some sort of moral. So it's worth pointing out, for those of you who maybe didn't hear the last one, these houses are actually like civilizations unto themselves, in the sense that regular people live there too. Right. And they essentially are, the regular people, the humans, worshippers of these godlike figures. And the heroes take care of these areas in the way that heroes would. And I'm sure they have some kind of, you know, way of, maybe they have some caretakers that they employ or something like that to keep things in order, you know, to keep things looking decent. But there's no world government. There's no, like, governing body of the world or any specific country. It's all superheroes, or in this case, villains. Let's move on to the House of Justice. This is the JLA, or what's left of it, because as you can probably tell, a lot of those characters have splintered off.
Yeah.
The lineup of the Justice League at the time of our story includes Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle, an Aqualad that has grown up to be the new Aquaman, and a Wonder Girl who has taken on the mantle of Wonder Woman after Wonder Woman herself opted out to become Superwoman upon marrying Superman. In addition to this, there is the Flash, Wally West, and the new female Flash, Slipstream. And he says, although I prefer the name Joni Quick, but this is by the by. Joni Quick.
Oh, that's funny.
There's also Captain Comet and a new female Dr. Light. Then you have the House of Tomorrow. This house is essentially the house of the characters who are known to time travel in DC. So the Rip Hunters, and I say Rip Hunters because they're all stuck here. If you remember, the Time Trapper set a trap, which is what trapped Rip Hunter and the Legion of Superheroes. This is where they all decided to like hang out together. Jonah Hex is here, Space Ranger's here. They're all trying to figure out how to get the hell out. That's basically what this house is about.
That's funny. I don't want to deal with it.
Right. Yeah, like we gotta go. This is nuts.
What was the name of that house?
Oh, this is the House of Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
The last house we have to talk about is the House of Lanterns. Very interesting stuff going on with the House of Lanterns. So, the Green Lanterns use alien power to protect various sectors of space. There are many Green Lanterns, of course. A handful of those are human beings, especially if you go back to the mid-'80s.
Most of them are human beings at this rate. Am I right?
Sure. Yeah, right. So that would obviously cause some problems when humanity and the other superheroes are trying to remove aliens from the equation. So here's more. The House of Lanterns, at the time our story opens, is abandoned and shattered, since all the Green Lanterns, being self-confessed agents of an alien power, the Guardians, have been banished from Earth during the anti-alien purges mentioned earlier, which resulted in Starfire's death, and which also resulted in the banishment from Earth of the Martian Manhunter, the Hawks, and any other alien characters I might have forgotten. Superman, since his own alien culture no longer exists, and since he has lived on Earth since infancy, has been made a citizen of the United States, and is thus exempt. Anyway, while the House of Lanterns no longer exists upon Earth, an emergency House of Lanterns has been set up on one of the moons of Mars. Here, the exiled Green Lanterns conspire with the other space powers, including the Rons and the Thanagarians, to restore their power on Earth.
Whoa.
The space powers, knowing through their intelligence resources of the imminent joining of the House of Steel and House of Thunder by marriage, are afraid that such a union will enable the Super/Marvel family to bring all the houses under control and unify Earth, as a resourceful planet ruled by a pantheon of invincible gods. The space people fear that such an empire might soon set its sights upon territories that are currently the province of the Hawks, Guardians, or Martians. The actual Green Lanterns residing on the House of Lanterns at this time are a reformed Sinestro, Carol Ferris, and Guy Gardner, Green Lanterns of Earth, Soto Yacht, the Daxamite, quote, ultimate Green Lantern, whose existence I hinted at in the story me and Kevin did for the Green Lantern Corps Annual, and maybe an aging Tomar Ray, just because I'd like to see what Parrot Men look like when they get old.
Wow.
What we just learned is actually a crux of the story of Twilight of the Superheroes, because it is about these aliens trying to stop, and not just them, other people as well, trying to stop the joining of the two houses, because they fear that could lead to a conquest of space as well as Earth.
That is fascinating. And it makes sense, right? Because like the irony being Green Lanterns as the protectors now protecting from the rest of the sector from this problem planet that they once prioritized.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Wow.
I love
That's
it.
so cool.
I love it. Go ahead.
Sorry, Aaron did ask, sorry if I didn't hear it, but for the story, was there a main character for the book? I think we chat through that in the first piece, but there's no like central POV necessarily, right?
Yeah, the central point of view characters, the characters who we see the story through, are Rip Hunter and Constantine.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and they're big parts of the framing device, and then this version of the Constantine that that lives in the twilight of the superheroes era is an older man who meets Rip Hunter and then tells him, "Hey, man, like we gotta stop this. Basically,
do something about this shit."
Yeah. So now, there are a lot of other relevant characters who have varying degrees of import to the story. I want to talk about Batman really quick. So, this is from Moore's notes. Quote, "Nobody's actually seen him for years. He's rumored to be around, he's rumored to be active, and rumored to be doing something, but nobody knows what or even really if he might have died years ago." I'm not going to say anything more about Batman.
Ugh.
Because that is where we will begin next week when we talk about more of the story, whether or not Batman's alive or dead, what he might be doing if he is alive, and if he's alive, who he might be working with. So lots of questions to answer about that.
Wow.
Damn.
Also next week, we're going to get into, at least I think we're going to get into some of the like real life meta things that were happening when this document was found, which will take us into the 90s, into 90s internet, and how a journalist who is still alive today and who still works in comics today had a major influence over how the story of the Twilight of Superheroes was told. Now, I promised that I would show you guys an image drawn by a Moore collaborator that represents what some of these characters might have looked like, and so I will do that here in just a moment. This image is drawn by Don Simpson, and this is an image of what the primary members of the House of Thunder might have looked like. And you should be able to see that now. This is by Don Simpson, drawn in '99. And we have
Snazzy. Damn, that's a short ass dress.
I know.
What are you covering with that?
Not a lot. And if there's a breeze, we might be seeing a lot more than we bargained for.
Whoa. Jeez, you talk about her short ass dress. You got Captain Marvel's whole wiener sticking through his.
You ever see the ambiguously gay duo from Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This very much reminds me of that.
Yo.
So we're looking at an image of Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, and I'm assuming that is Captain Marvel Jr., not the son of them, but the whatever. What's his real name? Freddie.
Yeah.
Freddie. Yeah, Freddie.
Yeah. He looks like Elvis, right?
I can see that.
That's on purpose.
It is.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Elvis and Captain Marvel Jr. were like in real history, Elvis was a massive fan of Captain Marvel Jr.
Oh, wow.
And thus, through comics, Captain Marvel Jr. has been made a massive fan of Elvis as time has gone on.
That's so cool.
I did not know that.
Oh, that makes sense in the movie then. They make jokes about it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they weren't jokes. Baz Luhrmann genuinely tried to make Elvis a superhero style movie in that vein.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And it makes even more sense when you look at this image and you see that Mary Marvel is saying the House of Thunder, also known as Graceland.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty cool.
Yeah. Hound in the chat says they are very 90s renditions.
Yeah.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
At peak 90s renditions. I would love to know, like, and maybe this is something we can talk about in the future, but like who the artist should have been or could have been, or who would have been the right person to do this story.
Not this guy. Too much wiener.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. But yeah, this is the only thing we really have to go off of. A lot of other artists have done their renditions. I didn't want to share them because a lot of them are people who are just fans that wanted to show off what they thought these characters might have looked like, and I don't want to steal from them or anything like that. And I felt like Don Simpson, at least he had some connection to Alan Moore, so I did like that. Tom Scioli, who is an artist and writer, wrote Jack Kirby: The Epic Life of the King of Comics, actually put up a video on YouTube called Alan Moore's Interminable Ramble, which is what a lot of people refer to this as. And in it, he showcases some of his renditions of what these characters might have looked like. So it's a lot more low to the ground. But if you're interested, that exists. But that's
neat.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so hyped. I think we've got 2 or 3 more of these to go. So 2 or 3 more deep dives into Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes. If you're enjoying it, please do let us know. We appreciate all the feedback that we get on this. If you have questions that you want us to try to answer throughout, send them in, because we can deal with that. We can bake those in.
Atomic actually put a question in that got lost in chat, but does this enhance or diminish Alan Moore in terms of legacy? He said question for next week, so maybe we incorporate that.
That's an interesting question. That's actually that's something that's been on my mind in general with this, and something that I kind of wanted to address at the end.
Okay.
Because there are people whose worldview or whose view of Alan Moore is colored by this, even though it never came out, which I do think is unfair, but we'll talk more about that in the future. Twilight of the Superheroes is Alan Moore's would-be DC event that aimed to establish an endpoint for DC canon. It first surfaced online around 1995 as a pitch document and has been the subject of debate, scrutiny, and controversy ever since. This is part 4 of our deep dive into Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes, the greatest comic story never told. Last week, I promised that this week we would get into the story of Twilight of the Superheroes. And I worked diligently to find a way that I thought made sense to present you guys what the story is. In the pitch document, Alan Moore lays the story out in a way that's quasi-readable, because there's a lot of anecdotes or things that he throws in, and it's not necessarily told in an order that allows for shock or reveals and things like that. So I tried to take what he wrote and put it in a narrative that's clean.
Sean, you did some deep internet searching, didn't you?
I really, really, really did.
You know how I know?
Go ahead.
One of the images you sent me is a non-animated GIF image.
Yo, that was so weird. I was like,
wait, what? I haven't seen one of these in forever. It's back when I was making HTML pages for Neopets.
Wait, a non-animated what?
GIF image, GIF file format.
They were not animated before?
Oh my god.
This is 90s internet.
Huh.
Your internet wouldn't have been able to handle that at the time, So Tyler, as Tyler alluded to, I actually was able to find several more images of characters from this book drawn by creators that Alan Moore has worked with. And we will be showing you guys those here as we go forward. The way we're going to handle this is a little different than we have been, so bear with me. But without further ado, here we go. The story begins in a bar in 1987 New York. John Constantine drinks alone with a bitter, angry look on his face. In walks a gorgeous blonde who beelines for Constantine and asks him for a light. We then flash back to early as Constantine speaks to Rip Hunter, who tells him that he's from the future. To prove this, Rip tells John several things he could only know by learning them from Constantine himself. Rip tells John about the horrors of this dystopian nightmare he escaped from, and how John from the future actually helped Rip escape and sent him to enlist John's help. Convinced, John agrees to use his connections with a variety of superheroes within the superhero community to warn them about this future in hopes that their actions can prevent it from ever coming to pass. We jump once again, this time to the future. It's 1995, and society is crumbling. A conglomerate of villains decide it's time to make their play for world domination and unleash a vicious attack. The Justice League decides they're done playing cat and mouse games with the world's supervillains and go on the offensive in order to not only shut down this campaign, but eradicate the threat of supervillains the world over. They enlist the aid of superheroes across the spectrum, and it works. It works so well that it shows the assembled group of heroes just how powerful they can be when they work together, and convinces them that their combined force is the only way to protect an uncertain, vulnerable world. United and paranoid, the heroes decide to push forward a motion to outlaw all aliens from Earth. A majority of heroes back this, leading to a schism among their ranks, with groups like the Titans backing away from the superhero community and the Green Lanterns banished due to their powers coming from alien technology and being governed by the Guardians. Now I'm going to stop. Tyler, whenever I say the name of a character, if you have an image for them, just show it, okay?
Okay,
cool.
Gotcha.
Some years later, the superhero community has splintered into houses, with the most prominent being the houses of Steel and Thunder. Superman and Superwoman's son, Superboy, is set to wed the daughter of Captain Marvel and Marvel, Mary Jr. This is not a wedding happening as a result of young love. The two houses seek to merge in order to use their combined might against the remaining houses and rule over what's left after the war. As the wedding date approaches, both families are in states of turmoil. Superman and Wonder Woman fear what will happen when they can no longer keep their son's tendency towards sadism and cruelty a secret, and what might happen after he marries Mary Jr. They're also concerned about their daughter Supergirl, who has yet to find a suitor, and Captain Marvel Jr. has little interest in her. This is, of course, because he's having an affair with Mary Marvel.
Oh, that's right. Ew.
Some Game of Thrones shit.
Which has been easy for them to keep hidden from the Captain because of his aloof behavior. Captain Marvel still struggles with his duality and prefers to spend his time in his human form, Billy Batson, whose mind ages but whose body remains that of a child.
What?
Ooh, interesting wrinkle.
Oh, you don't know. While Mary Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr. have long given up their human forms. Things have changed of late, though, as the Captain seems to be kinder, gentler, and more to his family, even if he avoids visiting old friends like Talkie Tawny. Mind you, everything that I say, I'm saying for a reason. So all of this, it's a story. All of this connects. The impending wedding worries the other primary houses. Houses of Titans and Justice chief among them. Nightwing, the cold, embittered, and ruthless leader of the Titans house, reaches out to the House of Justice leadership and even the House of Secrets, comprised of villains who manage to skirt the villain Purge in hopes of forming an alliance of their own. They mutually realize the threat that a merged House of Steel and Thunder represent, so they agree to work together to shut them down and divvy up what's left of America between themselves. On screen, we're showing a rendition of Nightwing from this from Twilight of the Superheroes.
Whoa.
Yes, and so this was actually drawn by J.H. Williams and Mick Gray.
Wow.
I can
Yes,
see
and
that now that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it, right?
Yep.
It's for those of you who are only listening, it's Nightwing perched atop what appears to be something that should make us think about the Statue of Liberty, but isn't actually, I don't think. It's holding a flag that is representative of the Teen Titans. It's not the Nightwing we know. He's much more covered up, I would say. He's got some kind of a mask or visor on, something of
It
that
looks
nature.
like a
He
luchador
actually-
mask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of reminds me
Booyaka.
of Hawkeye from Ultimates 3. Weird
Huh.
pull, but that's what I'm
Blind
thinking
spot for me. Sorry.
of. It should be. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Think so. Yeah.
All right, awesome. We'll continue.
I got questions, but I want to get the full
Oh,
picture.
yeah.
And the House of Justice was the JSA characters,
The
right?
Justice League holdovers.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. And I would imagine JSA as well, probably, but that he doesn't get that specific.
Okay.
Moving on, we shift over to the barrio, where the retired superheroes and superhero adjacent characters have made their home. It's a poor place with little hope to be found, and many of the locals spend their time at Sandy's, the primary bar within the barrio, run by Sandra Knight, once known as Phantom Lady. Patrons include characters like Blackhawk, who is preparing an army of young men to become Blackhawks as well and take the fight to the primary houses. So we also have an image of Blackhawk, which I was very surprised to see. This is by Timothy Truman. Truman created a cover for Miracle Man. That's the connective tissue.
Oh yeah, I can see this now. Yep.
Yeah,
He
and
was
then
the
it's worth
Eisner
pointing
killer.
out, J.H. Williams and Mick Gray were working with Alan Moore on Promethea.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
the connective tissue on that one. This version, I don't know Blackhawk. I can't think of ever having seen Blackhawk.
There was
so I
a
have no
Lady
concept.
Blackhawk that I think is more prevalent in modern continuity. That was on Birds of Prey. Yeah.
That character I've seen.
They're like it's like a part of the military stuff because
Yeah.
they were not alongside what's his face I'm forgetting what it is.
They were like
but-
JSA contemporaries, I believe.
Yeah, but I think from like they're from Quality Comics, so like they came in later, got incorporated into DC.
And in this iteration, Blackhawk is struggling, I guess, with his history of war or his history of violence, and he has decided that he's going to conscript young men, like boys, into an army, because he can't let go of what he's been through, and he's tired of the superheroes, so he just wants to,
Sure.
burn it all down.
Damn.
So that's what we're dealing with here. Moving forward, another important regular is Plastic Man, who has taken on a job as a prostitute.
No.
Could be whatever
He's
you
a
want,
lovable-
baby.
He's a lovable guy who uses his abilities to keep himself looking youthful, although signs of deterioration are visible beneath his clothes. He is the only employee of Seductive Winks escort agency, and his top client is Kathy Kane, who pays handsomely for his company.
Yo, he's the human fleshlight.
I don't like that.
I mean,
Keep that,
someone with that power set, that seems like a realistic,
right?
career track. Like if somebody had those powers in real life, they would not be Reed Richards. They'd probably be this guy. This is just post superhero comics. This is classic Alan Moore.
And there are descriptions for a lot of characters that we might not necessarily get to, but I think more often than not, I was like, wow, that makes sense on Moore's part. The trajectory.
This is the one you picked.
Well, there are others as
Sure,
well. But
yeah.
I just thought everything I'm saying is important.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't have an image for this.
I wish I had.
Yeah, I could draw one real quick.
So I will continue now. It's here at Sandy's where John Constantine, a man who lives largely the same as he always did, making his way by getting over on people and putting that silver tongue to work, plots a scheme of his own. He's been spending his time of late reaching out to various patrons at the bar, but also using his connections to reach high up the food chain, even having personal access to Captain Marvel himself. He's made allies with nearly all the prominent figures within the superhero community, and they all believe him to be a friend. Constantine has found happiness in this dystopian world, essentially married to a woman he's been with for 15 years. He can't accept the state of the world, though, and feels compelled to do what he can to change it. Constantine's persistence eventually leads him to a meeting with a secret cabal led by none other than Batman, who, alongside the Shadow, Doc Savage, and Tarzan, have come up with a plan to eliminate all superheroes from Earth.
Pause. Tarzan?
Tarzan.
The Shadow and Doc Savage?
Yes.
This is the Didio thing that he was talking about.
The first wave, yes.
First wave, yeah.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. This reminded me of First Wave. This is it literally was Batman, Doc Savage, and I think the Shadow was there as well. So it is a similar idea.
I think yeah, you might be right. Just no Tarzan.
No.
They could have, because that's public domain, so I don't know why they didn't, but yeah.
Yeah. So
it's not a very powerful group though. Like there's a
on
power
its
set,
face,
like it's cool, but like
yeah. Well, if you want a good plan, as we know, Batman's the guy to go to, right?
True.
Constantine promises to help them in their mission however he can. Meanwhile, the Question, an underpaid investigator who has little left in life other than finding answers, searches the barrio for information about a murder he's obsessed with solving, involving a little person who appears to have been killed by a 6'6" prostitute. Now, little person is my verbiage. That's not what Moore used.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to. So yeah, that's what's going on with the Question.
Interesting. Okay.
This far.
But we know of only one prostitute at the moment.
There's a lot of prostitutes.
So it's worth me pointing out, Marco brings up a good point. There are a lot of prostitutes in the barrio. It's mostly prostitutes, panhandlers, drunks, people who are superhero or superhero adjacent, but who've kind of like given up in life, lost their way, things like that.
Become vagrants.
Yeah, it's like Amsterdam.
It's strange. I can't tell what Alan Moore's opinion on sex work is. It's either he's pairing them up with these, the bottom of society, or he's a big fan. So I can't tell.
I think it's probably both. Yeah. I don't think I don't think Alan Moore has a negative feeling about poor people.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
It just is.
It just is, exactly. I think he's using it to show how the world has deteriorated.
Right.
This is like the last vestige of, people.
In general.
Yeah, who know what the world was like and how good things were and how good they personally had it. I'll make a quick aside, actually, about characters you all will probably be interested in. Green Arrow and Black Canary. They've retired as superheroes. They live in the barrio, but they've run an underground newspaper where they're disseminating the truth about what's really happening in the world. And the Question helps them by giving them information that he comes across during his
Sean, one big question mark for me is, and feel free to stop me, but where's Lois Lane in all this?
Lois Lane is nowhere, I don't think.
Yeah, it just seems like that would be a good spot for her, but she's not with Superman. It seems like a big question mark there that's not addressed. But.
Yeah, I can't recall a reference to Lois Lane.
Okay.
If I find one, I'll
that alone is interesting in itself. The complete lack of her too. Yeah, that's a complete disillusion of the humanity of Superman in a way.
I'm almost done, so let me just get through this last bit. With the wedding only days away, Constantine learns of yet another plot developing in the shadows. The alien races who've been exiled from Earth, including the House of Lanterns, which now exists on a moon of Mars, fear the possibilities of the Houses of Steel and Thunder combining, and how their desire for power might extend beyond Earth, creating a grave situation for the galaxy and beyond. Any approach would be seen coming a mile away by the likes of Superman. But luckily for the aliens, they have an ace in the hole. Adam Strange.
I can get in and out by the Zeta beam.
Oh. And we know that the Ranians and the Thanagarians are
The
on the side of
Iranians?
the lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, Tyler, you missed that one last week. The Ron and
Oh,
the
I
Thanagar
watched
has-
it.
Oh,
I
that's right.
watched
That's
it,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, they teamed up. So, but you could also do that with magic, considering Constantine's there, right? He's not going to be able to see through that kind of stuff. Whoa.
And we do have an image of Adam Strange on the screen. This one was actually drawn by sorry, I think it was Gil Kane. Yes, it was Gil Kane who did Adam Strange.
Nice.
It's a pretty like quintessential
Yeah.
Adam Strange type of image. Doesn't really look like it's informed by the times they're in as much, but Adam Strange is kind of that type of character, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Gil Kane's connection to Alan Moore is that he drew the Wild West segments in Alan Moore's Supreme and in Judgment Day, which was Alan Moore's aborted attempt to revamp Awesome Comics universe.
Yeah, it's
So
clean.
yeah, I think it looks great. This was my favorite one. This and the Nightwing one, I think. And then I did want to point out for the Marvel Family one, that was by Don Simpson, and Don Simpson worked with Alan Moore on Pictopia in 1963. So that, though, is where the story will stop for this week. We still have more story. There's still the other half of the story to go. And I still want to talk about the real life part of all this, which we still haven't touched on. There's a lot to go. But I've got a few more characters to show before we close out, and I did want to answer questions that you guys might have had. So I think we'll show those characters off, and then we'll get into the questions. So the next character is Kong Gorilla.
Kong Gorilla?
Yes. Now
Yeah,
this was a
deep cut.
character
Yeah.
I don't even know who that is. At first I thought it was Gorilla Grodd. And I was like, yes, come on, let's go. But unfortunately it is not. Kong Gorilla is Congo Bill. And it says he eventually decided to stay in the body of a gorilla forever and is now quite a wealthy and successful local businessman. A golden gorilla wearing a business suit and even managing to talk just about recognizably, even if some of it has to be done in sign language. And there's more information. He's not really a prominent character, but we had this image, so I did want to share it. I thought this one was badass. It looks
Yeah, it's
really
fucking
good.
cool, dude. He's holding up
Yeah.
a skeleton and everything, or a dying person.
The trope of adventurer turned gorilla is ever present in comics, so this is DC's version of it. I think Gorilla Man is Marvel's version.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Very
Yeah,
almost
but
1-to-1. Yeah.
Put this guy in Justice League Dark ASAP.
I believe this guy was a villain, actually. Something tells me he was a villain. I feel like I remember seeing him in like Legion of Doom, that big Jim Lee splash page,
He's a villain in this story as well.
Okay, yeah.
He's not a player like that, but he is a villain. He runs a criminal organization, and the body that he's actually holding is himself.
Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know Congo Bill, but it appears that Congo Bill like can be in the body of the gorilla, but that at some point they were separated, I guess. And the body is Congo Bill's body that Congo Gorilla is holding.
Gotcha. I always thought it was like a transformation thing, but it's Alan Moore. Who knows?
I
think
thought
the idea,
so too, but it seems like more is
yeah, the idea of
freaking out.
separating them but then being the same person is very big Alan Moore brain stuff. So
yeah.
So Alan said, unable to bring himself to kill it outright, Kong Gorilla keeps the shackled and naked old man in special rooms at his apartment, feeds it garbage, and hopes it will die soon, but it doesn't. It just lays in the corner and snarls weakly when he enters and fixes him with its ancient glaring eyes as he gives it its food.
I have a question specifically about Kong Gorilla, though. Imagine you're the editor at DC Comics. Alan Moore gives you this huge pitch, and like Kong Gorilla is a part of it. Like, what are you thinking? Like, like really, like Al, we need to We need to pare this down a little bit.
His role is so minimal that he won't get another mention from me. He's just not relevant.
Who's the artist on this one, Sean?
So this one is Stephen R. Bissett. Bissett worked with
yep.
Alan Moore on Swamp Thing,
yeah,
in 1963. So
oh shit,
yeah,
I do like all his buddies, are doing art for this. Yeah.
And so it's worth pointing out, I don't know the full story behind this because, again, we're going old internet, but I believe that these were actually all commissioned by the same person. The same individual reached out to these creators specifically and asked them if they would do these renditions for money.
Hold on, I think I have, because this I just googled Congo Bill, and it's a gold gorilla.
Yeah,
and I think I have an annual from Swamp Thing with Bissett and Moore. Hold on, give me a second.
With Congorilla?
With Congorilla.
Oh, that's so cool. It would also explain why this is so good, because this one is very detailed.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
From a detail standpoint, it's probably the best one.
Nothing like a gorilla smoking a cigar.
With a dead, an almost dead body in his hands, yeah. Cradling a corpse. We've got a couple more.
The next one is horrifying.
So the next one is Doll Man. And so Doll Man is dealing with an issue where his constant size changing has taken a toll on his body, leaving him insect-like and lacking human intelligence. And so he's like really long. His limbs are long and very creepy. He's only I believe he's 6 feet, but it's like it's in his legs and arms.
It's length. Not height.
And if you can see it, it's really disturbing. If you're a podcast only listener, I highly encourage you to get the YouTube video of this, and we've always got the timestamps. Jump over to this part and see this because it's really weird.
And the idea of this being a natural, I guess, end point for a guy whose ability is to turn small,
right?
Is creepy. This guy was part of like what was it? Freedom Force, I believe. Uncle Sam's team.
Oh, Uncle Sam is another relevant character here.
Alan Moore loves Uncle Sam.
He said that was his favorite character to write in all of the.
I couldn't find it, but I'm gonna post it in the Discord because I know I have it.
Awesome.
Who drew this one, Sean?
Yeah, so this one is by John Totleben.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Also, he's so Bissett was the penciler, and Totleben was the inker on Swamp Thing.
Okay. And so Totleben worked on Swamp Thing, as Marco pointed out, also Miracle Man and 1963.
Yep.
So, very cool.
Wait, who is this guy?
Doll Man.
This is Freedom Force.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. And then the last character that we have to show off here is Dead Man.
Oh.
Who is now an amalgamation of himself and Baron Winter. Winter's mind has long been burned out in a psychic battle, leaving an empty shell that Dead Man has taken refuge in. So on screen we do have that. It's a weird concept. I don't know much about either character.
He's done it in the past, where this is cool. This is Rick Veitch.
Yes, nailed it in one.
Yep. Also Swamp Thing collaborator. And has gone to do other stuff. Aquaman's a really good run that he has, but Dead Man has done this in the past where he will incorporate himself into a body and take it over. There's 6 issues of a crossover with the Challengers of the Unknown and Swamp Thing as well, where he goes into the body of Swamp Thing, and they think that they're teaming up with this character, but it's really Boston Brand guiding and doing everything so that he can communicate with them for some sort of force that they have to fight together.
I like how Marco doesn't know the original use of a GIF file format, but he could just say, "Oh, that's Rick Veitch," like.
Easy.
So now, before we close, you guys said you had questions. What are your questions?
I mean, I have questions that I don't think you can answer. Mostly, like these seem to be like Baron Winters. Like he is scraping the bottom of the DC barrel for a lot of these character points, and part of me wonders, like, is this
He's touched
too
on
much?
all of these though. Like he all of these were previous characters
Sure,
that he
yeah.
touched and played with. So like he's pulling from his sandbox, if anything.
But like when I look at pitches, and I've written pitches for stuff before, this seems very involved. At least what's out there, almost like too much. Where like I can see this being so big and so intricate that I'm like, no. As an editor, I'd be like, all right, it's too much. Can't do that. And also, like, it's a little weird. Is choices.
I think in the case of this particular pitch document, it exists more. It's a ramble. It's a way for Moore to get all his thoughts about it and all his concepts into one document and then work from there. I'm pretty sure, based on having read the whole thing, that Deadman, Kongorilla, Dollman wouldn't have had any story
Impact,
relevance other than just being in the barrio and maybe having like a speaking moment where, oh yeah, haha, I have if you're Kongorilla, haha, I have a dude in my apartment that's dying, like things like that, but we wouldn't actually spend much time with those things.
It's more like when you got the old Star Wars Cantina people action figures and they had all the backstories on the back of the action figure pack.
And it's important to remember, this is supposed to be the end of DC.
Yeah.
So he's saying goodbye to all the characters for the most part, with a special attention paid to characters that he actually likes. So you'll notice like no actual Supergirls here, only the daughter of Superman and Superwoman, who is Wonder Woman. That's Supergirl. There's no what's her name, Kara Kent. She's not part of this.
The other thing too that I'm wondering is like, I mentioned First Strike or whatever. Right? That's what it was, right?
Yeah. First Wave.
First wave. How many? I'm wondering how many DC events subsequent to this pitch have existed because of this being an idea in the comic book fandom that has been just absorbed into like the consciousness of everyone, that it's just like this has been the seed that's grown in a lot of different events going forward. Like even the fact that like it sounds like a DC Civil War too at the beginning there, that caused like the registration of aliens and kicking them out. Like, could that have been the impetus for a Marvel idea? Like we'll never know because it's just not how ideas work. But this just seems like a primordial goop of event comics, really, even more so than Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah, I think that heroes fighting heroes is something that Alan Moore probably wasn't too riveted by, as a general concept. But I think when you add in all the sort of, as you said, primordial goop elements of it that stand the test of time, because we've seen them for all time. Gods fought, when you read about those mythological characters, you see a lot of battles, and whether they're detailed in the way that a comic book script would be, that these wars are occurring. And so I think Alan Moore is really extrapolating from that. But to your point, especially as we go forward, there is a remarkable amount of things that happen in the intervening 30 plus years in comics from this.
And my curiosity is that just because of just us and writers just getting the same ideas through like message boards, or just like part of the consciousness, or like does DC just go to this occasionally because they would have the rights to this pitch, right? If they had it somewhere in a draw, could they be like, oh, this sounded good, here's something we can take out of that, and like dissect it? Like I don't know if that's a possibility.
Well, you said that, and Sean had a cheeky smile, so I don't know.
I'm sure that's what Alan Moore thinks.
I'm sure that that's going to be the topic of the next edition
Ooh.
of Twilight of the Superheroes.
Me getting ahead of you came in handy for once.
I'm really curious if you guys enjoyed the presentation of the story this way. I chose to write it out. I just felt like that would work better. I enjoyed it, so I want to know if that worked for you, if that presentation worked for you guys. You know, are you still on the hook? And what questions do you have? I would love it if by the end of this, we had a bunch of listener questions that we could just tackle if they've not yet been answered by our weekly series. So, yeah, Tyler, Marco, are you the read there?
I thought it was good. Yeah, I thought it was, I mean, especially the way you described it not really being cohesive or coherent. You did that. So, yeah.
Yeah, they piece it together. I mean, this has been hyped in just the concept and the structure, but to like now have it play out, I think, yeah, that's really cool.
I wonder if we can get someone on the show who might have worked on DC comic events and throw this idea to them to see if they have any opinions on this story.
Opinions on the story itself?
Yeah. Or has, any familiarity with it.
Just get more on the podcast. That's it.
If only we had a creator coming on the show that would probably definitely know about this. But
I would feel so weird asking Jeff Johns about this. I don't know why, but I would just feel so weird. I'm curious, but I don't know if I'm curious enough to ask, and that might change in the
just maybe
coming days.
We could do some off the air stuff,
Yeah, that's true too. Atomic Hound says, "Is the reason so many fictional futures are dystopian really a call now to keep us moving forward?" Do you mean that the point of them is to force us to think about what could happen if we keep doing the wrong things? Because if that's what you mean, I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yeah,
I think the best example of that is Terminator 2. That's literally what that movie's about. And it functions similarly to Twilight of the Superheroes in that it shows us the life we're living and how that's not that great anyway. But then it also shows where things will go.
Yeah. I think that's just dystopia in general. Like, I think of Soylent Green, that movie. Like, it's just like, all right, this is the ultimate end of what our current reality could be. Well, let's not get there because it ain't good looking.
It's a warning. Yeah, it's a warning. And thank you for the compliment. I'm glad you felt it was excellent, Atomic. This is part 5 of our deep dive. Twilight of the Superhero, Alan Moore's would-be DC event that aimed to establish an endpoint for DC's canon. It first surfaced online around 1995 as a pitch document and has been the subject of debate, scrutiny, and controversy ever since. This is part 5 of our deep dive into Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes, the greatest story never told in comics. So, last week, we began the narrative telling of Twilight of the Superheroes pitch document, and we covered just how the dystopian DC future came to be, the impending between Superboy and Mary Jr., and how their union and the union of the Houses of Steel and Thunder could lead to all-out war. We talked about Nightwing's fear of this outcome and his forming an alliance with the other willing houses, Constantine's behind-the-scenes machinations, how something is off about Captain Marvel, and we learned that the exiled alien factions have a plan to invade Earth, with Adam Strange possibly being their way in.
That was wild.
Yeah.
Zeta beam action? Fuck yeah.
I am super excited for this next chapter. But before I get into it, did any of you have any things you wanted to bring up or question or anything like that?
I just never want to see Dollman again.
Yeah, I feel you.
So to actually genuinely piggyback off that, I just listened to part 4 before we started the show, and Tyler, I think it was Tyler, brought up something to the effect of how deep Alan Moore had to go to find some of these characters, people like Congo Bill and Congorilla and Dollman, in the 1980s and before 1980 and Crisis, before they pulled a bunch of everything. The comics publishers were publishing just any old thing. And that's why you have stuff like Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. So, someone at some point brought up like the relevance of these characters. I think Alan Moore would have been the person, who shovels the shit to get something like Congorilla, and it would have been hyper relevant.
He also had written a majority of them already.
Yeah.
In various different places.
I touched on them.
Yeah. Tyler, I don't know if you have, sorry, Kill, go ahead.
The people like Tom Brevoort, who know absolutely everything about Marvel, the editors back then, were insane about that stuff as well.
Right. Yeah, they were all Brevoort.
Yeah.
Tyler, I don't know if you have queued up any of the images that we used from last week.
I don't have the ones from last.
That's all right. I'm going to get into the presentation then. And you guys can listen along. Again, this is all written by me. This is a narrative interpretation of what Alan Moore wrote. Largely, what I'm saying is what exactly happened. If I'm not putting it together in a way that makes sense for a story. That's the only real, editorializing, I guess, that I'm doing.
And this was during the 80s, Congorilla in a Swamp Thing annual. It's a Brian Boland cover. This was some of the wacky stuff, to Kale, your point, that was being published at the time.
All right, here we go. Now that Constantine has learned about the plan to attack the Houses of Steel and Thunder on the day of Superboy and Mary Jr.'s wedding, he realizes that if his plan is to be successful, he's got to act quickly. He engages in a juggling act, making calls and visits to all his key allies within each faction, promising to aid their side in the coming battle. He makes a trip to the House of Tomorrow, where he meets Rip Hunter, who is key to John achieving his goal. Constantine reaches out to the leadership of the Titans and Justice League houses, urging them to go forward with their attack against the Houses of Steel and Thunder. Just after, we see him pay a visit to Captain Marvel, informing him of the coming attack, but asking that he not aid the House of Steel during the battle. Politely, the captain asks John why he would do such a thing, giving the impending unification of their families and houses, to which John simply lights a cigarette, causing the captain to flinch, and tells Marvel that he should know exactly why. Marvel's fear becomes joy on his face as he agrees to do what John has asked. Meanwhile, the Houses of Justice, Titans, and Secrets, that's the villain's house, sends agents into the barrio, hoping to strong-arm the various retired heroes who've made this place their home into aiding their combined might in the coming battle. Some of these foregone heroes join the cause, enthusiastically or otherwise, while others yet secretly align with Constantine, to whom the barrio is also home. Constantine pleads with the secret cabal of Batman, Tarzan, and the other non-powered heroes to hold their attack for a more opportune time, and after hearing Constantine's plan, they agree. All the while, Constantine secretly searches for two individuals within the barrio, one of them being Gold, of the nearly extinct Metal Men. John has gone to great lengths to find him, and now that he has, he tricks him into coming out of hiding, and then he melts him down, cruelly killing him. The other, an old man who Constantine is able to finally locate. What are his plans with this old man and the melted down Gold? The wedding day has now come. As Superboy and Mary Jr. say their vows, the onlooking crowd holds their peace to keep their lives, and the parents of the to-be-weds, Superman and Superwoman, and Mary and Captain Marvel look on, knowing that this moment cements their power over not just this world, but any world they choose. Pride comes before the fall, and it's at this moment that the combined forces of the houses of Justice, Titans, and Secrets strike. Though caught off guard, the sheer might of the houses of Steel and Thunder proves too much to bear, and the losses for their enemies begin to stack up quickly. Superwoman ruthlessly kills her former protege Wonder Woman, who used to go by Wonder Girl, as the majority of the Titans, Justice League, and villains die in the battle. Go down easily, though, and manage to take a few down with them, including Superwoman herself, who dies at the hands of Captain Atom, and her son, Superboy, who also falls in this war to end all wars. Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel use the chaos as an opportunity to escape into space, where they might be able to live their life peacefully together, and are joined by Supergirl, who never wanted any of this. That leaves but two: Superman and Captain Marvel. Superman has been badly beaten, but remains ready for whatever may come, while Captain Marvel is unscathed, having not lifted a finger to prevent or cause any of the violence that lay at their feet. They stand united, waiting for the next stage of this attack, should there be one. Now the air crackles, and the sky is filled with a golden light. Before either hero can look up, the alien horde has arrived on Earth via Zeta Beam. This alliance of lanterns, Hawkmen, Martians, and more makes quick work of what's left of the houses of Justice, Titans, and Secrets, turning their attention now to Superman and Captain Marvel. Even in his weakened state, confident that he and the Captain, who has always been his physical equal, can shut down this invasion and send these invaders' bodies home with a warning. Earth has its rulers. Except that isn't Captain Marvel at all. Horror fills the eyes of Superman as he looks at who he believes to be the Captain and watches as the visage falls to reveal Martian Manhunter,
Whoa.
no longer in disguise. But how?
Whoa.
How could Martian Manhunter, at his best, kill and replace Captain Marvel? He didn't. He killed Billy Batson.
Yep.
See, Billy had a problem. He didn't want to be Captain Marvel all the time. He wanted to meet people and live in the world as Billy, except that while his mind aged and matured, his body did not. He couldn't find a sexual partner in the body of Billy, but he certainly couldn't go trolling the barrio for pleasure as Captain Marvel. So he wore clothes and carried himself to appear as old as possible, leading people to think of him as a little person. His body wasn't mature enough for traditional sex, so he developed a desire for S&M, being tied up, gagged, the whole nine. One night at the barrio, he met a 6'6" gorgeous blonde woman who promised him the night of his life. And while he lay in bed, tied and gagged, he watched in disbelief and terror as she changed, becoming the Martian. The gift, he believed a curse, would have been his only way to survive this. But gagged men can't speak, can't say magic words, can't say Shazam. So died Billy Batson, and the plan of the aliens was set into motion. Enraged by the betrayal, Superman kills John Johns with his heat vision. But now the invaders are on him, and Superman fights them with the power and fury of 10,000 suns. It's a battle for the ages as Superman single-handedly fights this army, but the Green Lantern's might is too much for just one Superman to bear. As Superman makes his final stand, Sodom Yat, the ultimate Green Lantern, is able to overwhelm and devastate Superman, killing the Kryptonian turned Earthling and effectively ending the war, with the alien coalition victorious and free to rule over Earth unopposed. If not for Batman.
What?
And that is all.
No.
Until next time.
Oh,
This story is so Alan Moore, it hurts.
Yeah.
I was on fire for this until Billy Batson goes to the S&M shop and he disguises himself as a little person. I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, let's go. Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
same. I was like, typical Alan Moore to try to think, all right, how do I depower Shazam? Well, I got to make him not be able to say Shazam. How can I do that? Ball gag, like
gag,
Yeah.
jeez. So hold on. The old
bro,
man.
just have a wank and then write the script. Come on.
He probably did. That's why he's fresh off
Yeah, I
it.
guess so. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's dance is not Alan Moore without a sex crime. Ay, ay, ay.
This is interesting. It has spun out much differently than I thought it was going to play out. I like the
Yeah.
interplay. I like the conniving from Constantine. That is him. Going around, seeing these people, having these conversations, making allies, backstabbing, like all that fits.
And Sean, this was supposed to be the new status quo for the DC universe, right?
No, this is an end point for DC. This is the last DC
Gotcha.
story.
But it would have been the main universe. But this is the end goal of it.
It is
Yeah.
in continuity, yes.
Yeah.
It is the main
Yeah,
Earth
I
of
wonder-
DC, yes.
Wonder why DC said no to this.
Well, everyone keeps saying that, but I don't know why you guys are so sure that they did. We
Well,
haven't talked
alright.
about that yet.
That's true. That's true.
But then, like the cycle of comics, like how do you come back from this?
But they don't.
Yeah,
It's the
that's-
end point.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
point.
But like you've not. It seems like with all of this, like this battle and everything being done, you do not have your next wave of heroes.
Well, guys,
It's
this
just
would be the
it's
end
just
point.
lanterns.
Yeah. This is the book of Revelations, you know.
But what do you? I mean, but like, what do you publish after this?
Anything.
So, again, because this is an eventual end, not
Right.
a continuity right now end, it doesn't even matter. But beyond that, everyone has to keep in mind that this is not the script. So,
Sure.
in an earlier episode, we talked about how Alan Moore wanted to introduce new characters and then wanted them, but he wanted them to appear as not new. So, like, yeah, they're new to the reader, but in Twilight of the Superheroes in this future, they've already been heroes. They've been a part of all this, and we're just learning about them now. And then writers that were contemporary at that time could then take those characters that were old in Twilight and introduce them in mainline continuity as new, fresh-faced, but we would know how things end for them.
DC's been doing the same thing for Kingdom Come for
Right.
years.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Sodom Yacht is an Alan Moore creation, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Sodom Yacht
So,
debuted in a Lantern annual,
Yeah.
Yep.
and
So I like how
that's
that's
why.
like him keeping his boys, you know, he's feeding his guys there.
And it's actually a resolution of a question that was asked in that very annual, where the implication is that Sodom Yacht is supposed to be the savior of the universe, but the prophecy says that he ends up failing. And a lot of people weren't sure what would end up happening. And this moment is suggesting that he accomplishes that goal.
Oh, it's interesting that that's brought up in the Sodom Yacht story because that's kind of the inverse of the storytelling here. Instead of showing us the endpoint, I guess it is showing us an endpoint.
Yeah.
And how do we get there? That's like
Right.
it's like a proto Twilight of the Superheroes, that one story in a way.
In a sense, yes.
Interesting.
So this is the end of Sodom Yacht. However things go next week or next time, because we're not doing this next week. However things go next time, we will know whether Sodom Yacht succeeds or fails at what he's supposed to be doing.
Man, why did Gold get jobbed out like that though? Knowing Alan
We will
Moore,
find out.
he's gonna get melted down into a cock ring or something.
I was fascinated by the Martian Manhunter flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Unfortunately, in the pitch document, it's not presented in a way that's like, oh my God, like it's kind of more matter of fact. But it's so crazy that he went that way and used the Martian like that. You almost forget about that character. Because it's like, well, he's an alien, he's obviously exiled. So what? Perfect usage of that character, I thought. Did you guys did anybody catch when I said the cigarette lighting and how Captain Marvel flinched?
Oh,
Yeah, I caught it and I went,
what does
know
that
what
mean?
that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, he doesn't like fire. Okay.
Right.
That makes so much sense. Okay.
Mhm.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah.
And I guess the Martian Manhunter would still have a super strength in flight
Right.
too, so you'd be able to.
He's always been equal to Superman.
Oh yeah.
Physically and that.
Physically,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he have laser eyes too? He has.
Yeah.
At
But
the
Shazam
end,
doesn't, so he wouldn't have that power. Okay, he'd be able to masquerade as Shazam pretty easily.
especially if all he's doing is like posturing, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. There's no battles. No one's fighting until the wedding day fight. So he didn't even need to physically exert himself. He just needs to be Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
But in earlier episodes, we talked about how Captain Marvel was acting differently. All of a sudden, he was nice. He cared to spend time with his family.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. It's because it wasn't Captain Marvel. He was replaced.
Oh.
It never was.
Did they say how he kills Billy Batson, or he just kills him?
He just kills him. I mean, it's a child that's gagged. You kill him any way you kill him.
Slowly.
You said that very
3.
matter of factly, Sean.
I mean, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of how he kills a kid.
How else
Just
would you
take
kill
him
a
in.
gag child?
I've never done it.
The gold has to be something with like Dr. Fate. I was even thinking old man, like Phantom Stranger, like his gold medallion.
Spectre, I was thinking.
Ooh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a cool guess. Harris guessed Dr. Fate in the Twitch chat.
Huh.
This
Interesting.
is so fun.
God.
So
my
man.
first thought was actually because while you were talking, I forgot about the Green Lantern angle. I thought it might be like a weird Sinestro connection.
Oh, the gold.
The gold, yeah.
Oh,
Why?
yeah. Because they're weak against.
Literally just the color.
Yeah. But that's something
A
Alan
lot
Moore
of
would do.
theories.
Yeah.
Well, he's already isn't he in this universe reformed?
Sinestro?
Yeah, is he not? Is he not part of
I
the
don't
Green
know.
Lanterns or something now?
He might
No.
be part of the villains because at this point that wouldn't have he wouldn't have been the yellow wouldn't be a whole emotional spectrum. He would have been as powerful as Captain Cold.
Yeah. Unless he's the old man that, they were looking for.
I can't wait until you guys find out what's up with
God.
that
What could the
old
old
man.
man be?
It's so cool.
What if it's
So
like
I've
the
been-
anti-monitor or something?
I've been trolling comic book scripts for my professor wants to kind of get into writing graphic novels and stuff, so I've been showing him examples of how comic book scripts are written, and I've seen this pitch document in a link to it. I almost went for it. Ooh, I almost went for it.
Classy Ulysses says, "Don't end it, keep going. It's so good." But we got to have something to look forward to. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we've got two more Twilight of the Superhero editions, or Twilight of the Superheroes. Yeah, 2 more editions. 1 more to close out the narrative, and then probably one last one to have a final wrap conversation. I really want to answer questions, but I also want to do what I've been teasing the entire time, which is get into the reality of this, because there is a whole other side to this story that we haven't yet discussed, including some internet forum conversations between people who initially saw this pitch document and what they thought about this in the mid-90s. I'm always fascinated about stuff like that.
Yo, those internet forums in the mid-90s, people were very candid on those because they didn't realize, this would still be available in 2023.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we've got
essentially just, just letters between friends.
more to go. We've got a lot more to go. I hope you guys are enjoying it still. This is so much fun to do, and I enjoy, writing these a lot. It's so much fun for me and keeping you guys on the edge of your seats and stuff. I'm getting to flex my creative muscles a little bit. So this has been a blast. It's been an absolute blast.
Sean, the value has been there. These Patreon listeners are paying for the whole seat, and they're only on the edge.
I like it. This is part 6 of our deep dive into Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes, the greatest comic story never told. So, last week, where we left off, there was a great big war. And we saw the Houses of Thunder. We saw the Houses of Steel. We saw the Houses of Titan, Secrets, Justice, so many battle. We saw Constantine's plan start to take shape, and now we understand not quite exactly, but sort of where he's going. And we still have some questions about exactly what Constantine wanted with the old man that we discussed, and what the fate of Twilight is. So here we go. The greatest protector the Earth has ever known has fallen. Superman is dead at the hands of the ultimate Sodom Yacht, leaving the planet to be ruled by the combined alien forces. Is this what Constantine envisioned? Earth dominated by yet another set of superpowered individuals? Just before the Horde can begin relishing their victory, a small army of non-power leap into action. Batman's secret cabal, John Constantine and his recruits from the barrio, the Blackhawks, all rising up as humanity takes its last stand. So, all adorned in vibrant, powerful, golden armor, granting them immunity to the otherwise omnipotent Green Lantern power rings. Gold's cruel fate gives humanity a fighting chance. As the two sides reach a standstill, Hal Jordan points out that the alien horde will never relent. They will stop coming through the Zeta Beam until humans stop resisting and accept their new masters. Humans are a crafty set, though, and none among them are as crafty as John Constantine. His big play doesn't end in a fist fight. That's not his style. He has one more trick up his sleeve. The Mobius chair.
What the fuck?
Constantine spent weeks, maybe more, searching the barrio for an old man. But not just any old man. Metron in disguise. Banished to Earth for sacrificing his morality in search of knowledge, he is forced to live out his life as an ordinary man with no inherent ability to impact Earth's current predicament. All Constantine needed was the chair. As he now explains to the alien invaders with a sly grin on his face, Constantine used the Mobius chair to go to the antimatter universe of Quard. He traded the secrets of the boom tube technology to them for the promise that Earth would be safe from the inevitable invasions the Quardians will ignite across the galaxy with this knowledge. Constantine informs them that right now, as they stand on this battlefield listening to his words, their homeworlds are being invaded by the infinite army of the Quard, led by the Anti-Monitor. The alien warriors they think are chomping at the bit to cross the Zeta Beam and join this fray on Earth are actually engulfed in fights on their own planets that may take centuries to win, should they even be able to win at all. Stunned and horrified by Constantine's revelation, realizing just how badly they had been played, the aliens immediately retreat to their respective homelands, should there even be homes to return to and fight for. The future of humanity is in the hands of human beings. Under the guidance of Batman, the Shadow, and others, they would once again be able to chart their own futures. All super people banished from Earth forever. Constantine pulls out his lighter and a cigarette, holds it to his lips, and smiles as he lights it, knowing that his little games and manipulating the world, and that a shot at a genuine utopia was possible for humanity. Now we flash back to a similarly sly grin on his face, cigarette in hand, as Zatanna frustratingly storms away from a confrontation with him, yelling that someday he'll meet somebody slicker than him, and he'll find himself in a mess. To which he replies, "Baby, there ain't nobody smarter than me."
Uh-oh.
We flash a short time forward now, and John speaks to Rip Hunter, exasperated and confused by the fact that so many of the heroes he warned about the future hadn't heeded his words. Now, well, he thinks Rip told him about the hot blonde he meets at a bar and goes on to be very happy with. Can't be all bad, right? Rip hands John a letter from his future self. Quote, "Dear John," the letter begins, and John reads as his older self apologizes for manipulating him so cynically. Manipulated? Future John remembers meeting Rip Hunter. He remembers being conscripted for this mission. That despite his best efforts to the contrary, Twilight unfolded all the same. He apologizes once again, but reminds his younger self that love awaits and things really do get better eventually. John's been played. He was forced on this mission by his future self, a fruitless mission that would inevitably result in the same outcome. But he doesn't know everything about the way that things end. Furiously, John heads to the nearest bar and proceeds to get sloshed, his head circling around a desire for a revenge unattainable and to grips with the fact that he was played by himself. "Excuse me, have you got a light?" John hears these words and looks up to see a beautiful woman standing before him, a woman he knows he could fall in love with and spend the rest of his years in bliss with. However, his hatred for his future self outweighing his love for his current self, he makes the only choice worthy of a self-righteous, cynical bastard such as he. He looks at her blankly and replies, "I don't smoke." Now, to the words of Alan Moore, he says, "And that's it. I hope you can see how it's meant to fulfill all the requirements mentioned earlier. There are opportunities for new characters to get a springboard, old characters to get a shot in the arm, and all the merchandising you can handle in terms of games and stuff, at least as I see it. The Warring Houses idea sounds ideal for a role-playing game, or maybe even a video game. The overall continuity is hopefully enhanced without being damaged in any irreversible way, and I think we might get a damn good yarn out of it in the bargain. Anyway, I seem to have gone on far longer than I intended, so I better wrap this up. I'll be looking forward with interest to hearing what any of you have to say about all this when you've had the chance to read it. If any sections are incomprehensible and need clarifying, then please give me a call." I think my biggest question coming out of all this is, what the hell did people think when they read this the first time? And what were those phone calls like?
I have questions.
Please do.
What happened to Gold?
So
He
Gold,
got melted. He got melted in the last
melted
one.
down.
he was
What
melted and used for the armor that the non-powered heroes were wearing.
Oh,
remember
gotcha.
that
Okay.
this is
That's what I didn't register that part. Okay.
This is at a time when, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the reason why they did this. Green Lanterns were still just weak to yellow in general.
Yeah.
So because they were wearing that armor, the Lanterns could not really deal with it, which is what turns the tide of the battle.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the aliens were the Thanagarians and the Ranians, right?
And the
Iranians.
Hawks people.
They're the Thanagarians, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I gotcha.
It just seems like it ultimately was a Constantine book. Like,
It always is, dude. With
Yeah, I
more,
guess so.
it always is. He gets
Yeah.
his way. He manipulates people. Checks.
It certainly is an ending.
Yeah, honestly, I think I was into it. Even with the Billy Batson snuff film part.
Yeah.
Not into it like that, but like
Well,
then the end
Alright.
kind of fizzles. You know?
But I
It
mean,
feels
it's
like a
an
Tom
ending.
King ending, actually. It feels like the ending was issue 11, and the solo issue 12 was this Constantine stuff that I didn't really care about.
Well, I should say that is maybe I didn't tell the story very well. Maybe I shouldn't have framed it this way and doing this last piece of the actual story as, you know, the finale of the battle and
Epilogue.
the epilogue. Maybe that was not the way to do it.
Is that how it was pitched? Was it pitched chronologically, or was it pitched all
Yeah.
over the place?
No, the way I lay it out is the
Okay, that's not you then. That's just how the story is then.
I think though, Classy Ulysses points out that the Martian Manhunter twist was mind-boggling. I think that is like the thing. You know, like we've been gearing up for this war on Earth the whole book pitch. The alien stuff, like that's to the side. Like they were coming after Superman. Oh, he's gone now? Great. Like Superman and his family, they were going to be the challenge, but they're gone. So,
And, you know, it's worth pointing out that if we were reading this comic book, you know, the battle between Superman and Sodom Yacht and the Green Lanterns would probably be one of the coolest things ever.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
in my mind, as I was reading that, I was picturing in the last episode, I was picturing what that would look like. And I gotta say that like that had to be so cool.
And at the time, it like Sodom Yacht was relevant, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It would have felt like a wrestler, like a fan favorite wrestler getting a big push, you know? Like a Brock Lesnar year.
And I think the dominoes falling accordingly, seeing what Constantine was really working on, having that bang after bang after bang of revelations and reveals, I think it would have worked. I'm a little surprised at your guys' reaction, to be honest.
I think I enjoyed that. Like that wrap up, I think is pretty typical of a Moore story. Like you have the big conflict, and then he just has like an epilogue to say something maybe thoughtful.
Yeah.
I thought he knocked it out. Like for me,
anti-smoking is the
you know what, that lines up too.
I like that,
the thing that bugs me is the Metron chair.
Yeah.
Like to me, the Deus Ex Machina of that really like, boy, that stands out.
Okay, so that is one instance where if this were actually printed, it's clear to me based on having read this that Alan Moore would have seeded that stuff out. So by the time,
my issue is if they depower him, he doesn't have the chair. You know, like, so how does he get the chair? But again, that's a writer will write the explanation for that. So
the general like idea is that he is stuck. He can't do anything with the chair. He can't leave Earth. He can't do anything. So I don't know how. I'm sure he would have found a way around that.
You write it. That's how. Yeah.
Right.
I always hate the critique. It's like, well, how does this happen? I'm like, well, figure it out. You write it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Any lingering questions about the story?
So I guess Batman's team wins, right?
Yes.
The
So
humans win.
the humans win, and now they will be able to basically restart society.
But then how do you get rid of like the superpowered people? All right, like
they're dead.
Aliens went and wrecked shit.
The alien. So I'll explain what Constantine's plan was. Constantine's plan was, I'm going to make allies with everybody, but I need Steel and Thunder specifically to lose. But in the midst of their losing, I need them to also kill the whole Justice League and the whole Titans. And then the aliens have to come and finish the strongest of the remaining players, which is what Sodom Yacht does. He kills Superman, and that's Superman. So now that happened, Constantine already knows that next those same aliens are going to have to deal with the remaining humans. But whether they win or die, they'll likely at least be able to get to a point of a standstill. Now, Constantine can reveal his endgame plot, which was the antimatter Quardians, who are, as he's talking, killing all these worlds.
Marco, it's like when we played Fortnite that one time, where we just waited and hid the entire time, getting all the good gear while everyone else killed each other, and then we won.
Well, because like my I don't remember there being parts where like, let's say like Raven dies or something, right? Or like Beast Boy, like those people have powers. Are they just now like anybody that remaining that maybe would have survived? Are they just expelled?
They're dead. No
splash page, kill them all in the background.
If they took part in this battle, they're dead. Like if you the last week or last time we did this, I talked about how like it was death after death after death, but I didn't get into the granularity of who was dying because it's not narratively interesting for me to say it constantly, but also Moore doesn't give details about all of the deaths. And I should also point out that anytime I said like Hal Jordan, for example, or Zatanna, those were not in Moore's version. Those are, he leaves it as like someone says. And I thought that narratively that was not interesting. The story is told, that wouldn't be the case. Zatanna was chosen because she's a former flame of Constantine. And I chose Hal Jordan just because he's the primary Green Lantern. So those were me. Just in case that affects your viewing, that's me.
Oh,
it almost feels like this is a proto Watchmen in a way. Like I can see the world existing after the fact of all this being a very post superhero world, and that's Moore's favorite playground.
Yeah.
So this is the creation of that postmodern superhero take for the DC universe. It even writes away aliens. It's like, hey, they don't exist anymore as far as we're concerned.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
It's just Earth. It's just people. It's Tarzan. You know?
It's Tarzan, Doc Savage, and the Shadow.
Yeah.
And then also to answer Top Lane's question, Anti-Monitor, again, that was me. Because the Quardians because he's from the antimatter universe and has led the Quardians at that same time frame, I extrapolated to add flavor and included the Anti-Monitor. But in the actual text, it's a generic force of Quardians.
oh,
I just didn't think that was as interesting.
It was good stuff, dude.
Thank you. We're not done with Twilight of the Superheroes because we've got one more presentation to go. And this is the one that I think people have had a lot of questions about that we haven't been able to get to, which is the real life aspect of all this. So next week, we're going to talk about why this never actually came to be, how it actually almost came to be anyway, and where. Which major comic book reporter had a lot to do with this story and almost made it possible to get this published.
Ben Urich.
Rich.
Reporter of comic book. God, okay.
Little hint. That individual may have written a story about us this week.
Okay.
His name rhymes with Itch in your Johnson.
Oh, God.
So we do have more to go. I want to answer it. Go ahead.
Are we going to get to like Alan Moore's like how this affected him as well? This not being made? I guess we don't really know much about that because he doesn't talk. But
Alan Moore had a relationship with a certain journalist that allowed for things like that.
Okay,
so we will definitely be diving into
that's where the juice is for me on.
And any questions that you might have. There are things that I know about this story that just didn't come up for whatever reason. So if you're wondering about a particular character, I might be able to answer that, or just whatever we don't get to. If you have questions, write in. I have a backlog of questions that I couldn't answer for the sake of keeping everything, narrative. So that's what we're going to do. We'll blow it all out next week.
I I want the biopic, the Alan Moore biopic. That's it's like Air for Alan Moore. That new Jordan's movie that just came out.
That could be cool, actually.
Hell yeah.
I would like that.
Who would play more?
I want to end
Bill
this conversation with a fact about Alan Moore that I bet most people don't know. And that is that Alan Moore has, on 2 occasions in his life, met John Constantine.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I know this one.
Did he meet Sting?
Mm-hmm.
No. He met John Constantine.
Wait, what?
Okay. So
Marco
in
wants to know
1993,
what he took so that he can go find it at Coachella later.
in 1993, Alan Moore did an interview with Wizard Magazine, that old thing. And he said that he met John Constantine 2 times. Now, these are the words of Alan Moore. One day, I was in Westminster in London. This was after we had introduced the character, and I was sitting in a sandwich bar. All of a sudden, up the stairs came John Constantine. He was wearing the trench coat, a short cut. He didn't even look exactly like Sting. He looked exactly like John Constantine. He looked at me, stared me straight in the eyes, smiled, nodded, almost conspiratorially, and then just walked off around the corner to the other part of the snack bar. I sat there and thought, should I go around that corner and see if he's really there, or should I just eat my sandwich and leave? I opted for the latter. I thought it was the safest. I'm not making any claims to anything. I'm just saying it happened. Strange little story. His second meeting with his creation was okay. Well, this
Doesn't he meet him in the book at one point?
Yeah. He meets him in the book, and then years later, in another place, this is him physically actually meeting Constantine. Years later, in another place, he steps out of the dark and speaks to me. He whispers, "I'll tell you the ultimate secret of magic." And I don't want to say this word on the show, but I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. Any C word could do it.
Chat. Got it. I know how the Brits talk. Yeah. We're monetized now. We can't be.
Yeah, no, I can't do that.
Yeah, Sylv's got it. Sylv's got it in Twitch. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. That's a RuPaulism. That's not me.
Serving that.
Yeah.
Serving that.
That's funny.
You guys know how we end things here. At least we have for several weeks. This is the end, though, of that. This is the end of our presentation on Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes. We have done this for 7 weeks. We missed one because of Jeff Johns, but otherwise we've done 7 of these. And the story's over. We got through the story last week. We resolved everything. The big fight's over. And I really wanted to do one last chapter because I wanted to talk about what's gone on outside of the story since then. And to be honest, in some ways, I think what's happened since is maybe more interesting. Because Twilight does have a legacy. No one's ever seen it come to life. It doesn't exist outside of a proposal, but it has a legacy and it has a story unto itself. So let's talk about it. This is our final deep dive into Twilight of the Superheroes. This is part 7. It took 8 years before the Twilight pitch document made it onto the internet. So from 87 to 95. We all know that in the intervening time, Alan Moore was no longer working with DC. He took his ball and went home. And, clearly has had a vendetta against them ever since. Some people think it's rightful, some people don't. One of the major conversations going on the internet at that time, in 95, when it first came out, was whether or not it was even real. There were a lot of people who did not believe that the Twilight pitch document was real. Then, once it was confirmed to be real, they didn't believe that it was written by Alan Moore. even though I feel like it's obviously written by Alan Moore, but
Yeah.
There's bondage in
especially
it. Of course it is.
yeah.
You
Go
might
ahead.
be about to say this, and I apologize if you are. Who confirmed it? Do you know?
So this is everything that essentially everything I'm going to be talking about is based on Google groups and online chats and things like that. And so a lot of creators have said actually that they have read it. This is getting a little ahead of it, so let's not linger on it. But Mark Wade read it in '88, I think he said, or '89, somewhere in there, because he was an editor at DC at the time. So even at that point, a lot of people in the know knew it existed. And then one of those people leaked it, and once it was out, people started to confirm the veracity of it. But a lot of people were questioning whether it was too dark, whether it should have existed at all. If you can put yourself in the mind of somebody who was reading this pitch document in '95, right? You still haven't seen a lot of the ways that things would go. Remember, this is I believe '95 is still pre Kingdom Come.
Just like a year, I think.
Maybe.
I think Kingdom Come is 96.
Okay, so there were
96.
Yeah. Okay. So we're still pre Kingdom Come, although it's in the works.
Yeah.
And we're pre a lot of things that people think about today, like even what's it called? Game of Thrones, obviously the books, but like television wise, the massive popularity. We're behind all that. That hasn't happened yet. So a lot of these ideas are genuinely new to people. And they were surprising and people couldn't accept them. People really hated the idea of the Marvel family incest, which I get why you would hate that.
Wonder why.
And so much of that would be baked into English sort of royals culture. They marry their cousins all the time.
True.
And that's not even like blasphemous to say or whatever. Like the queen that just died, her husband was literally like her first cousin.
And they do it for a specific reason. They're trying to keep the bloodline, right? Isn't that the whole...
I'm sure that's...
Nice.
I wanted to read a comment. First of all, I wanted to do a whole episode just reading the comments from the Google group for between the years 95 and 98.
Shit.
It's amazing. It is amazing. Maybe I'll do like a Patreon thing for that.
Oh, that'd be good.
I wanted to read one in particular because I think this one will intrigue us all. And it's written by an individual. I can't confirm if this is the same person, but it's written by somebody who refers to themselves as Al Ewing.
Whoa.
And it says, I always thought, I'm sorry, this is in reference to the Marvel family incest. He says, I always thought that rang fairly true. Remember, you had saucy old Uncle Marvel hanging around with all the young kids and then taking his clothes off at every opportunity to reveal a kinky red body stock. I'm sure young Billy was corrupted by that old fiend. Anyway, all superheroes are pervs. And if you're also an adolescent boy, I'd have thought that only compounded the problem. Here's hoping for the talkie-tawny bestiality scene. Cheers, Al.
Coming soon to X-Men Red.
Oh, no.
So
It's
again, I don't
tongue-in-cheek,
know
Mark,
that
right?
this
That
is
is clearly tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Well, again, we don't know that that's the Al Ewing.
That smells like British humor, though.
I will admit it kind of feels like him. And there are a lot of other creators, by the way, that are in these comments.
Okay.
A lot. Warren Ellis is there. I saw I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but there were a lot of creators there that were commenting. So obviously Al Ewing would have been a young man at that point, probably not a creator. Anyway, the Twilight pitch document was something that people could not readily find. Almost as much as people were commenting on it, maybe double that were asking for it because they couldn't find it. Because as soon as it hit the internet, DC started their shenanigans and saying, wait a second, you can't post this. This is not okay. And so somebody had the idea of, wait a second, let's get this off the internet. Let's put this out into the public. Because again, if you weren't an internet person, you're not reading this. And this is 95. I don't know that most people had the internet. So someone said, let's get this out there. How can we do this? And that someone's name is Rich Johnston. Yes, the very same owner of Bleeding Cool, fun fact, ran a publishing company in the 90s called Twist and Shout Comics. And Twist and Shout Comics had their comics. They had the X-Files that they were publishing. And then I believe the other book was called Dirt that they had that they were trying to get over.
Was X-Files an IP of the show, or did the show come after the comic? I guess it's irrelevant.
It's based on the show, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. It has to be, otherwise that would be nuts. But the book's called Dirtbag, by the way, the other book that they were promoting. But Richard Johnson wanted to publish Twilight through his publishing company and struck a deal with Alan Moore to publish the proposal, titled Alan Moore's Twilight, A Proposal. Now I will refer to the actual comments that Rich Johnson made in the Google group in 1995. We're going back to December 95. Well, it's no real news for the internet, but Alan Moore has agreed to allow Twist and Shout Comics, that's me, to print the Twilight proposal. So hopefully for April, there will be a solicitation for Alan Moore's Twilight, A Proposal. The book will exist to allow non-net users to read the work and also to promote the name of Twist and Shout Comics for next month's Dirtbag 6. This excited so many people. But it also caused people to question how this could even be possible. How could you publish this with DC's characters? People were citing law, saying that there was precedent for them being allowed to do this, citing a book called The Uncensored Mouse, a comic book published with a blank cover that included inside the early tales of Mickey Mouse, of course, owned and copyright by Disney. People felt that because that was possible at the time, that it must mean that you could publish a book with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman in it and not get any fire from DC Comics. Of course, that's not true. Disney went to bat for their Mickey Mouse, and as it turns out, they were right. The company that was publishing the book actually didn't have their facts straight, and the copyright had not yet actually rolled over. And so Disney went to court, and they were able to win.
30 years too early.
And they never will.
Yeah.
And they were literally republishing old Mickey Mouse,
Exactly.
which is like, a big no-no. But Warren Ellis actually took to the Google net to ask Rich Johnston to ask Alan Moore if DC had paid him. Because if DC paid him, and if Alan Moore has a check that explains what he was paid for, if he was paid for that proposal, DC's got all rights. But if they haven't, then Alan Moore has a case.
Then it's just a spec script at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And so on December 14th, Rich Johnson posted an update, and he said, sigh. You know it's something when a person starts a sentence with a sigh.
Was it asterisk, sigh, asterisk?
No.
No? Okay. All right. There was no ooh-woos here. Okay.
No. He said, I received an email today from Jay Kogan, DC Comics Director of Legal Affairs. By the way, I think he's still at DC all these years later.
Damn.
Referring back. Just before I was going to get in contact with them. Full of phrases like, quote, violate our rights, and quote, without limitation, and quote, we ask you to confirm. Apparently, DC not only claimed ownership of the characters, but also the proposal. Looks like we'll have to pull this from our schedule, guys. I've replied asking if there's any way we could cooperate on this, but after email with friendly Patty Jarris, I'm not holding my breath. Not even a month later, we get another update. On January 4th of 1996, Rich Johnston posts, he says, Alan Moore's Twilight, a proposal ain't happening, folks. Talks with DC have stalled. Stalled as in up Schitt's Creek without a hardback Watchmen. And apparently, every DC editor has now heard of me. Well, perhaps I can turn that around into an opportunity. I would say Rich made good on that opportunity for what it's worth.
Yep.
And so the question at hand now is whether or not DC has the rights to the proposal itself. Someone tested that. Someone said, you know what? I'm not satisfied with the idea that we can't post this proposal. I'm going to challenge it. And so this is what they did. This is from hobos.com. And we go all the way back to the summer of 97. And this is the post. Well, after yet another month of waiting, I have re-enabled Moore's Twilight proposal. Over a month ago, DC's lawyer promised proof of copyright ownership, quote, within a few weeks. That has not arrived. Therefore, I can only assume that Moore still owns the copyright on this presentation. As near as I can tell, they still haven't registered the copyright. The proposal will, however, only be available during standard working hours from Eastern Time, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is thus only available during the hours when DC's lawyers can present proof that the copyright was in fact transferred. So here's the issue. DC is telling the internet at this time, you can't publish our copyrighted material. And so they would receive a copyright strike, whatever that looked like at that time, whenever they would do it. The thing is that when asked to produce the proof that they actually own it, DC never has. Literally to this day right now, they never have. And so this guy tested their gangster. And he said, okay, if you own the copyright, produce it between the hours of 9 and 5, and I'll never do this again.
Wow.
And they did it.
Call the bluff.
Wouldn't the copyright on the characters be enough?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So we got updates about this over the years. In Christmas of 98, we got an update that said DC still hasn't reached out. So the proposal is going to stay online. February of 98, though. Whoa, that doesn't, no, 99. February of 99. We got an update that said, Yowzers, received a letter in the mail from DC today. No wonder it took them so long. Rather than find the proof they actually own the copyright, which proof I am increasingly sure does not exist at all, they actually sent the proposal off to U.S. Copyright Office in their name 10 years after it was created.
That's funny.
This doesn't mean anything morally, of course. Anyone could do that. You could pop the latest Superman off the Copyright Office in your name, and they'd probably just stamp it and file it, and everything would be hunky-dory until DC found out and let the feds know, at which point you would be hit for $2,500 fine. Unfortunately, the only person who could really contest this is Alan Moore. So the Twilight proposal is offline, at least at this site, indefinitely.
What? Was Alan Moore paid for this? Did he ever say?
To my knowledge, and I tried hard, I could not find a single instance of Alan Moore talking about this.
Talking about whether he was paid or just talking about it at all?
Talking about it.
Gotcha.
Not one reference to anything.
If he wasn't paid, then in my mind, it's like, what's the difference between this and fan fiction then?
Yeah, that was my mind was going.
The difference would be, in my mind, in terms of why they didn't do it, is the fact that it does include their characters. And so at that point, it's you're getting money off the fan fiction.
I mean, like, not in terms of the publishing, but in terms of having it online.
Oh, well, they stopped hounding people years.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I think at this point, I mean, I have a little bit of like a conspiracy theory. I'll share it with you.
You?
I do. I have no knowledge if this is true or not. I think that the only reason that they pursued this copyright so vehemently at that time is because of Kingdom Come.
Oh, interesting.
Because Kingdom Come is a very similar. let me not say it's a similar story with similar ideas.
Structure.
And if Twilight Proposal was already available, if you look at the Google groups, people already, once it came out, people already said, "Oh my God, yeah, Mark Waid aped this completely." So I think they were trying to control the narrative on that. That's just my theory. And
That
then
makes sense.
when the conversation about what DC did to Alan Moore went so south, they were like, "Well, we can't, be seen as monsters in this at all. We're not going to pay the man, but we're also just going to let this rock." So, a number of elements from Twilight are obviously present in a lot of different stories. We've talked about it. We've talked about what's the book that Tom Taylor has? The
Dark Knights of Steel.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Dark Knights of Steel has a similar concept of like the houses and things like that.
But that has a similar concept from Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
It's
100%. And we can go on and on with the kinds of things that have similarities, but to Tyler's point, you could also attribute it to something else, right?
Was George R.R. Martin in those forums?
I didn't see him. This is taken from a Wikipedia article. A number of story elements from Twilight of the Superheroes have made their way into works later published by DC Comics. The 1991 crossover Armageddon 2001, for example, involves a messenger from the future traveling to the present to convince superheroes to avoid a disastrous future. That is what Rip Hunter and Constantine are doing. A dark future vision of superheroes as irresponsible was shown in the series Kingdom Come. DC later introduced a more flexible approach to continuity, similar to what Moore proposed with the idea of hypertime. Finally, the miniseries Infinite Crisis, along with the series New 52, or rather 52, reintroduced the multiverse to DC Comics. Other changes to individual characters that have appeared in the proposal, such as Teen Titans Cyborg becoming almost wholly mechanical, were introduced as well. It's hard to parse out what could have been taken and what not, because the idea to bring back the multiverse is not novel. Moore had it in 87, but it's not weird to me to think that another DC genius would come up with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm about to make a food analogy, so bear with me. But it's like if a dish had like think of Twilight of the Superheroes as like a sandwich, with all these different ingredients and certain layers and stuff. Then somebody else decided to use turkey. Somebody else uses mayo somewhere else. It's
Right.
I don't see how taking individual parts is taking from Twilight of the Superheroes, because anyone can come up with the same thought. Or B, if this was in a drawer somewhere and editors referenced it and be like, hey, we got this idea you can take from it. I don't know if they used it as almost like a Frankenstein sort of situation.
Like a sounding
They
board.
they just salvaged parts for it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Alan Moore's never spoken on the subject, but the creators of Kingdom Come have. So Alex Ross was asked by Wizard Magazine, I believe it was 98, but I don't have the date in front of me, about the origin of Kingdom Come. And he said, initially, I pitched the story to James Robinson because I figured he was a young wannabe Alan Moore.
Oof.
And I wanted this thing to be as much like a Watchmen type project as possible. Mark Waid was the one who came most well recommended by DC editors in terms of his love and knowledge of the history of DC heroes. And that's how marriage occurred. Stop. Now I'm going to go right to what Mark Waid said. Because remember what I said. Mark Waid was an editor at the time. This is what Mark Waid said. I read Twilight in 1988 or 89. So when I was a DC editor, and I loved it. Alex, however, had never read it until we were well into the second or third issue of Kingdom Come after it was all blocked. It's possible that some small elements of Moore's pitch influenced some of my own ideas. That's what good writing is supposed to do. But I think we ultimately took the DCU in a more hopeful direction.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying this is a fact. I'm not even saying I believe it. But let's put the pieces together. Alex Ross wants to do a big epic at DC similar to Marvel's that he did at Marvel. He wants an Alan Moore type writer. He wants a Watchmen type feel. DC does not give him James Robinson. Who do they give him? They give him a person who already read Twilight to tell a story that is similar to Twilight. Now, that's not the only reason they would choose to give him Mark Waid. Mark Waid is highly talented, probably one of the best writers DC had at that time, and still true.
Mark Waid feels like DC's Busiek, if they want to make the Marvels comparison, you know?
Yeah.
In terms of the guy who like just knows DC in and out. So I can see them doing that. And he's a little more tried and tested, more of a company man too.
I think it's complete. Yeah,
Robinson was kind of a hotshot, I feel like, in terms of the kind of stuff he wrote.
I don't believe, in my heart of hearts, that they deliberately stole.
Sure.
But if someone, like the argument that I just made, you can't really refute it either.
Sure.
This is why movie studios and television studios do not take spec scripts for the same characters.
Yeah.
Right.
If I write It's Always Sunny, an episode of that, and I send that to one of the writers, they cannot look at it. They cannot open an email. They can't do anything. Because if I have proof that they've looked at it, if anyone read any part of it and anything like that shows up in the show later on, I can sue.
Yeah,
it's just liability.
Comics are the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would also argue there's no way anything here is provable, but I would also argue, Waid says it's possible. I read Twilight. It's possible some of that stuff influenced my writing. I guess the argument of whether he stole it sort of depends on when he would have read it.
88 or 89.
So nearly a decade, almost a decade earlier.
Yeah. So, my point being is maybe they're in the back of his head, but after a decade, assuming he didn't read it again, in that in between time.
Look, and I'm sure, Kale, you can say this as well. I've had ideas that I think are awesome and I'm way into them. And then I realize down the road of iterating on it, oh shit, wait, this is just like that other thing that I like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or this is that similar plot twist, or this is that happens constantly. So you can easily give Mark Waid the benefit of the doubt in that way. The problem is that it never looks good for DC. Because if you take it at face value, right, which people aren't really inclined to do anyways, obviously DC did Alan Moore super dirty. And here's this great story that everybody wants to read that now they don't get to. But we get Kingdom Come, which some people thought was inferior, right? So that's unfortunate for DC. But then on the other hand, people are inclined to think that DC would rob Alan Moore, steal his pitch, or not steal, he gave it to them, but then not pay him for it, and then assert copyright that they don't necessarily have on the pitch because he didn't get paid, and then mine it for everything that they can and use it to tell stories a decade plus down the road.
The other thing that I'm thinking of, Moore is very open with what DC did with him and Watchmen, right? Very vocal about it. The fact that he doesn't talk about this smells like, he probably got paid then.
I think if he got paid, then DC would have just produced copyright.
Right. Yeah. I think he does. He doesn't talk about it out of maybe pride or something. Just this was a thing that I did.
I thought that's
why
the stuff he
don't
talks
you
about.
bring it up?
He probably doesn't care about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only just a proposal, let's be honest. It's not like there was a full book made. Even in his proposal, it's very wishy-washy about what's, set in stone and what's not.
Let me ask you guys a question. Did you know? That's so funny. Mark McGrath in the chat just said exactly what was coming next.
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
I was going to ask, did you know that DC actually ended up publishing it?
No.
So DC published the Twilight pitch document in a book called DC Through the 80s, The End of Eras. And this came out just a couple of years ago or so, and it features the pitch document. I read it. it is soulless. It feels uninteresting. They don't give it any context. It's presented flatly. There's no preamble. There's no lead in. It's just the pitch document.
Like verbatim, just whatever they had, just plastered that.
With some like 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 a blue background, but that's it. No character art, nothing. Just the words. And reading it, it actually made me feel angry at DC.
Did you send death threats?
Sorry?
You didn't send death threats, did you?
No.
All right, good.
Because it's like, man, you guys fought hard for this in the 90s. You didn't pay Alan Moore for it. This was 40 years ago, and you're just going to publish it like this, not acknowledging the controversy or your role in it, or all the years that people tried to get this and couldn't. It feels wrong. They didn't pay him, assumedly. We don't know that for a fact. But I'm assuming they didn't pay him a red cent for this. That feels wrong. And I don't think Alan Moore would take DC's money now, outside of whatever royalty checks he gets for Watchmen. I'm assuming he gets some kind of royalty.
I think he does. I think he's sworn it all off.
Oh, well, there you go.
I think Gibbons gets it all.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
to me,
yeah?
that's disgusting.
But by his choice, Marco. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, coming into this, I had specific thoughts about Alan Moore. And I wanted to see if this process would change how I felt about Alan Moore. I felt like Alan Moore was a bitter old man who didn't get what he thought was his just desserts. And so he was throwing a temper tantrum and was mad that the book that he wrote connected too well with people. That's what I always felt, right? After 8 weeks plus of thinking about this, writing about it, reading about it, digging very deeply, going all the way back into the 90s, my mind has changed. I don't see Alan Moore like that anymore. I have a deep sadness now for what happened to Alan Moore.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have a deep sadness.
That's how I always felt. It's just creators' rights are non-existent.
Right. But what I'm talking about comes from a slightly different place. Because what I learned about Alan Moore that I didn't know before is that he loved this.
Yeah.
He loved it so much. He still loves comics, but comics hurt him. And he watched it happen. This man watched it happen already to Ditko.
Yeah.
He watched it happen. And it happened to him. And he let DC slide. This is when the proposal was made, him and DC weren't on the absolute best of terms already.
But it was still an energetic proposal. It was full of passion for that world and what it was. Yeah.
100%. You couldn't write this proposal. You couldn't have these ideas without having a deep passion. And it's in the proposal. It's dripping with passion. It's in how he talks about it. He loves it. It's so clear. He doesn't hate superheroes at this time. Maybe he's warped now based on how things have gone for him, but he loves them so deeply. And you know who also knows this? His daughter.
Yep.
Leah Moore has talked about her father. And I wanted to read some of her quotes as we close, because I think they hit on what I'm sort of talking about. Quote, seeing folks sharing the Hollywood Reporter article, this is a reference to creators not getting their just desserts. And she says, and wondering how this is news, it's why my dad walked, why he's been angry for 30 plus years, why he doesn't want to chit chat about movie or TV. He was the best and they did it to him. And every interviewer acted like he was alone. He tried to make them into something that provoked thought and feelings, that addressed issues, that spoke to people the way superheroes had always spoken to him. That seems crazy to me. I have his collection of Marvel comics, dog-eared from reading from love. I heard so many times about his excitement at finding a stash of secondhand Marvel comics in a junk shop, in a box, or buying them off spinners in Great Yarmouth on holiday. He could not love superhero comics more if he tried. Jack Kirby was his idol. Ditko was his idol. The medium he adored was ruled by corrupt despots. That the people who made that magic were abused, that their contribution was not valued, that it was stolen from them. He already hated that before Watchmen. He already knew Kirby had been shafted. So when it happened to him, and then again, it wasn't just a business deal gone awry or a bit of bad luck. It broke him. The thing he loved most, the thing he poured all his time and energy into for his whole entire life, he could not do anymore. Can you imagine if he hadn't been fucked over? Instead of being grumpy Alan Moore shouting from his cave, he had spent the past 40 years, putting out book after book for DC and the rest, creating vast worlds full of the superheroes he loves, enjoying comics. It's a damn shame. I agree. It is a damn shame.
It almost makes you think, like, what if Moore was around, maybe started comics, a decade later, in to catch that image wave, where creator-owned stuff was more accessible and much more mainstream. What things would have been like then, but
I mean, he ended up doing stuff with was it
Sure.
1960? Was it 63?
he did stuff, but this was post him already being jaded by everything.
Sure.
It is Alan Moore through a lens.
Right.
There are still amazing Alan Moore works that come out. Alan Moore has done a lot of great things since the DC days. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about it because he's not working for Marvel or DC, and therefore, the publishing power to put, advertising behind it is not the same. But Alan Moore is still a tremendous creator, still a highly celebrated creator with the works that he would go on to do. I just feel sad for what we didn't get from the superhero end. And I feel sad for him because his life could have been different. He could have been so happy. I think about Bret Hart, the wrestler, and what people say about him and what he became after his career was cut short. It's the same. Yeah, Alan is bitter. Yeah, he's grumpy. Yeah, he's jaded. But there's a good reason for that. Any final questions for
big companies
Twilight?
suck? I don't know. This has always been my thought of Alan Moore. It's more of a tragedy, really, than anything.
Yeah.
I personally wish he would talk about it a little more, but that's not my call.
Yeah, more information would make it a better conversation to have.
Honestly, the story of Alan Moore as a creative mind, I think is rife for potential in its own right. As I don't want to turn someone's life into a commodity. Commodify, yeah. I don't want to commodify someone's life story, but that's just things we do. But
Well, Mark McGrath makes another great comment in the chat. The tragedy of the Moore DC split isn't about who was right legally or morally. The tragedy is that a company chose not to have 10 more Watchmen level projects from maybe the best comic writer ever. 100 million%. I don't give a damn how much money they're making off Watchmen. You mean to tell me that if Alan Moore sticks around at DC and you give him what he's worth, that maybe Twilight doesn't become a Watchmen level success? Maybe it's not Twilight. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a run on Green Lantern. Maybe it's a run on whatever it is. That's not worth something?
Yeah.
Not worth more?
well, the trajectory of comic books changes forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Thanks for listening. Appreciate all the support over these 7 episodes about Twilight of the Superheroes. This is definitely one of the highest highs of my time as a part of this show. So thank you for enjoying it. Appreciate the enthusiasm and the engagement. I will do this again. We will do this again. Don't know about what necessarily, but we will do another deep dive. If you've got ideas for what we should do a deep dive on, let us know. Share those. Because there's a lot of stuff that I don't know about. I chose this for a lot of reasons because I didn't know the story. And I had bad feelings about Alan Moore. And I wanted to challenge myself. And I'm so grateful that I did that. And I'm grateful that I have a platform to do that on. So thanks a lot. If you enjoyed that, if you enjoyed our show today, if you enjoy what we do in general, patreon.com/thecomicspals is the best way to show us your support. We talked earlier about voting with your dollar about the comics that you don't like. Vote with your dollar for the podcast that you do like. We've got a lot on offer. You get a name and a shout out here on the show for a certain tier. You get access to early voting on the book club, well, voting in general in the book club, early access to anything that's available early on our end. Our exclusive show over there called Palling Around. You get access to our newsletter. So we're packing it on our Patreon page. So that's patreon.com/thecomicspals if you want to check that out. We really appreciate it. Watch this show live every Saturday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern for Pals Pulls. Check us out on Tuesday, May 2nd for the Lazarus Book Club, Lazarus by Greg Rucka and Michael Lark. First 3 volumes if you want to catch up to read along with us. We appreciate that. And join our Discord server. We've got people joining, which we're really thankful for. You guys are great. Appreciate the interactions over there. Come hang out with us. Links in the description to anything we've talked about. Anything we're wanting you guys to know about, there's a link to. So hit that link. Kale, plugs.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Comics Pals, episode 340. You can find me and my work at kaleward.com. That's CALEWARD.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram for as long as that dumb bird app is still working. At Toto in Tow. That's TOTOINTOW. I watched the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers anniversary special. It was pretty bad.
I heard it.
It was pretty bad.
It's a thing.
Damn.
But I think if you watched Power Rangers as a kid and you were into it, I think if you won't get past the bad stuff. You won't. It's bad. But they hit that sweet spot where you could feel it again. You really can.
Is the putties that do it?
Putties are there.
Nice.
Hearing Billy and Zach do the morphing business, I gotta tell you, it feels really good. So bad or not, I think it's worth a watch. It's only an hour, and it's an easy hour.
I'll be watching. Can't wait. Marco?
You can follow me at Mr. Marco Enomoto on Instagram and Twitter. I went to Coachella this past weekend, and that is going to be the majority of my newsletter this week. So stay tuned for my thoughts. My first time going, a lot of good music. So I'm gonna spiel. I'm gonna talk a whole lot about it, and then if I touch on it, I might. I don't know if I have enough time for all of it, but there's some AI stuff that I've been working on. So,
Rose, how dare you use AI?
Cool.
Tyler.
I'm still pissed Marco didn't go to Charlie XCX's set at Coachella. Just saying. You can follow me at the Tyler Olson on Instagram and Twitter. My cat says it's lunchtime. No, his food. I have an automatic feeder. I just heard it go off. He just wants attention. What can you talk to me about? I have a shipment of some figures coming in that I forgot I pre-ordered. Which after what the IRS did to me, was a double hit. But it's fine. It's fine. So those might be coming soon. If you like X-Men, we'll see what happens.
What the IRS did to me.
Technically what someone else forced me to do, which then messed with my taxes.
Yeah,
Whatever.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
As for me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram only at Sean Soapbox. I had a great time today, and that's all I want to say. All I want to say is today's a good show. I had a lot of fun, and hope you guys had a good time too. We will see you next week. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Until then, we're the Comics Pal signing off. Take care, guys.
See you next week.